Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We are going to start with our presentation on the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail project. And I believe there's a number of people here from the county who might be on the line. It's hard to see on this screen. I see a little bit on that screen there. Todd, I'm going to turn it over to you as to kind of the master of ceremonies and see if we do have the information that was provided. So thank you, Kevin, for giving that over to us. You're on mute, Todd, just in case.
Thanks. Purpose of tonight's work session is to review the current plans for the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail Phase 2 and to have and provide the ability for the council to ask questions and comment on the designs for that phase of the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail, which effectively goes from Elm Street Park, where it enters Elm Street Park, to where it crosses Wisconsin Avenue. As you all know, a portion of the town's right-of-way is being used or is being requested to be used for purposes of constructing and operating the Capitol Crescent Trail. And this is an opportunity for you to see close to final design plans for that improvement and to, as I said, ask questions and provide comments and feedback to MCDOT, as well as Linda Gomez from Montgomery Parks is on the line as well. And I may be missing some people, but I'll let them make introductions in just a moment. We will not be discussing the memorandum of understanding that we have drafted and provided to MCDOT for review for purposes of utilizing town right-of-way for the purposes of constructing the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail. Irene and I met with them, with the MCDOT officials the other day, and it's just not right for discussion tonight. I think MCDOT folks have to go back to discuss some alternatives, ideas for how they want to engage with us on an agreement for the use and maintenance of the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail. So that we'll be awaiting comments and next steps on the MOU from MCDOT, but tonight is for the presentation of the close to final design plans. And I'll turn it over to Kevin or Dan. Kevin?
Yeah, I can take the torch from you here. Good morning. My name is Kevin Min. I am the project manager on the Montgomery County side for the Capitol Crescent Trail. With me today, I have Dan Sheridan, who I will let introduce himself here.
Sorry, Kevin, I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you. I don't know if it's the connection, but it's or the speaker. But if you could just speak a little bit louder, thank you.
How's that? Is that better?
That's a little better. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Just to repeat, my name is Kevin Min. I am the project manager here on the Montgomery County side for the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail Phase 2. And here with me is Dan Sheridan, who I will let introduce himself here.
Hello, I'm Dan Sheridan. I also work for MCDOT. I'm in the Division of Transportation Engineering, which is responsible for capital projects, and I'm the Planning Design Section Chief. So I think we have some consultants with us here too. So Andy Conklin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I'm Andy Conklin. I'm the project manager with Whitman Reckart and Associates as a consultant to Montgomery County. And on our team, Jameson is here as well. I'll let Jameson, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jameson Keaton, and I'm a project engineer at Tool Design. We're a subconsultant to WRA, and I'm the project manager for this project.
And then Linda, I think you have some of your team here as well.
Hi, I'm Linda Comas with Montgomery Parks, and I did see Steve Sattler with Parker Rodriguez in the audience.
Yep. I am right here, yes.
Okay.
We're the landscape architects working on the Elm Street Park improvements with Windows.
All right, so I think that's everybody here on the design side. We also have Rebecca Park joining as well. Rebecca, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Rebecca Park, Transportation Unit Manager of MCDOT.
All right, so I think that should be everyone from our side on the design. If there's anybody else I might have forgotten, please let me know. But otherwise, we have prepared a short presentation to review the plans for what we are proposing. And I think, Andy, if you want to take over, I'll let you go ahead and take control of the screen.
Yeah, sure. So I will share my screen here. Yeah. Hopefully you can all see that.
We can,
Okay.
yeah, Andy, you might want to
Okay,
zoom.
thank you.
Yeah.
Just to kind of give an overview of where we're at, and it sounds like everyone's pretty familiar with the project, but
I'm sorry, can
obviously
you please make it full screen? Could you make it full screen?
yeah,
You just made it smaller.
it's smaller. Oh, that better? Is that better?
A little bit more, Andy, please.
Sorry, I'm not used to Zoom, so stick with me a second.
There you go.
Yeah, oh,
Okay.
that was good. There you go.
All right. So just to give everyone an overview of where we're talking about here, this is downtown Bethesda, Chevy Chase, obviously. Our project, and Todd, I'm going to correct you just a little bit. You had mentioned that the limits of our project are from the northern end of Elm Street Park, which is correct, to down 47 across Willow and to Wisconsin Avenue. We are actually ending our project kind of in the center of Willow Lane here to tie into what was constructed about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago on Willow Lane, the shared use path on Willow Lane that brought the Capitol Crescent Trail across Wisconsin. So we're tying into that about this blue mark here, and extending what was built there along the south side of Willow Lane with a 10-foot shared use path and a sidewalk to 47th Street, and then coming up north along 47th Street on the east side as a 10-foot shared use path, and then coming through the northern end of Elm Street Park and tying into what the Purple Line is currently building for the Capitol Crescent Trail to take it from the northern end of Elm Street Park all the way to Silver Spring. In addition to the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail is being constructed, the northern end of Elm Street Park, basically from the promenade to the air rights building, will be redeveloped as well. And Linda and her team are leading that effort. It will likely be two separate projects. The portion of the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail from Willow Lane to the south side of the promenade along 47th Street, which is really just kind of a civil shared use path construction. That'll be a standalone project. And then as we move into the park and we get a little bit heavier construction with the park redevelopment and some grade changes and retaining walls in the park, that'll be a separate project. So it's kind of two separate projects constructed kind of back to back. And I will go through a couple of the other maps here just to kind of zoom in on the south part of our project where we connect to Willow Lane, where we connect to the shared use path along Willow Lane. As you can see here, we're taking it from where it's built today and kind of bringing it towards the south to allow us to have the 10-foot shared use path, a landscape buffer between the road and the shared use path here, and then the sidewalk on the south side. And we are in coordination with the Farmers Women's Market Development. So there's a little bit of determination yet about who's going to go first, whether it's going to be this project or the development project. But the ultimate goal, whether it's them building this or our project building this, is for this to be the shared use path with the buffer to the single lane on Willow Lane here. Come across, we're crossing the driveway into the Farmers Women's Market, crossing Willow Lane, and then coming up 47th Street. We are reducing the width of 47th Street. It's currently about a 24-foot single lane roadway. We're reducing it to a 12-foot lane roadway. And but in order to allow the truck movements from Willow Lane onto 47th Street, we are constructing basically basically a concrete area for trucks to turn, a concrete turning apron. Jameson, you probably have the term better than I
Yeah,
do.
sorry, you got it. Yeah, it's a truck apron. Yeah.
Truck apron here along 47th Street. And the purpose of this is to allow the trucks that go along Willow Lane onto 47th Street for the Papa John deliveries or any other deliveries that the trucks that come up here, in order to make that turn safely. We are kind of, as you can see, abutting the park here. So the utility poles that are there today will have to be shifted, where you can kind of see that circle there. That's where the line of utility poles are today. So we are gonna be constructed. As we come into the northern end of the project here, we are approaching the Elm Street Promenade, the Park Promenade, and Elm Street over here. We do have the shared use path. You can see 47th Street's only the single lane here, 12-foot wide lane. And we have a wider grass buffer here, landscape buffer. And then this brings us to the portion that crosses the promenade and then is going to go across the, zoom out a little bit, come through the northern end of the park, basically through the basketball court today, skirt the northern end of the park and tie into the portion of the Capitol Crescent Trail that's being built by Purple Line under the Air Rights building. As you can see, there is some grade changes here. So there is a retaining wall proposed to allow that grade separation to happen. That the retaining walls also allow the maximum space within the Elm Street Park here for the park redevelopment. And currently they're planning on 3 separate play areas. And I'll get into that in a minute. We do have some typical sections just to kind of show graphically or schematically what we're kind of doing here along Willow Lane. We have our single lane and straight buffer here. We have the landscape buffer, the 10-foot Capitol Crescent surface trail, and then the sidewalk over here. So this corresponds to the second map we were looking at, basically cutting a section right here, looking this way, looking towards Chevy Chase, town of Chevy Chase, towards the east. We've got this typical section that we will be redeveloping. The sidewalk on the northern side of Willow Lane, we're not touching that. That's going to remain as is. As we go up on 47th Street, the Bethesda side of 47th Street, the sidewalk on the west side of the Bethesda side, we are not touching. We're reducing the travelway to a 12-foot lane. We either have an 8-foot mountable truck apron or an 8-foot loading zone, kind of a little bit north of this section. A landscape buffer, which varies in width as you go along 47th Street, the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail, and then Elm Street Park. So I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions.
Please, go ahead.
So when you come off of Willow onto 47th and you have that truck turnout, I noticed on the graphic that at that point, the trail looked like it was it was both pedestrian and cyclist.
So along 47th Street, there's only the on the east side, the park side, the town of Chevy Chase side, there is only the shared use path. There is not a sidewalk and shared use path. And it's just, there's limited right of way with the park being right there.
Yeah. So I just wanted to be clear that that part right there where the truck turnouts are is a shared use pedestrian cycle. Past those turnouts, it becomes a pedestrian sidewalk and a bicycle path, or not? Does it stay?
No, it stays that way. So if I go to kind of the zoomed out view here, along 47th Street, this is the part we were looking at. This is an 8-foot,
Right.
the truck apron. And then we actually bump out, the roadway actually gets wider here in the middle of 47th Street. And this is an 8-foot loading zone. And the reason we have this is for deliveries to Papa John's. They park on 47th Street today. And if we brought this all the way up and reduced 47th Street to 12-foot wide the whole way, they'd be blocking the road for their deliveries. Also, if there was ever a fire, any of the buildings around here, the Montgomery County Fire requires I think a 20-foot wide roadway. So if we only had a 12-foot wide roadway here, they wouldn't be able to put their outriggers down. So we've coordinated with the fire department to allow this wider section of roadway within 47 for the fire access or fire use, and then also the truck loading zone for deliveries and everything. So along 47th Street, it is just the 10-foot wide shared use path for both pedestrians and the cyclists.
And then on Willow, it becomes a pedestrian sidewalk and a cycle path.
Right. Yeah, I can make that clarification too, Andy. I didn't want to interrupt your flow earlier, but that's a separated, we would call that a protected separated bike lane. That's 10 foot wide with the sidewalk adjacent to it. So that's the separation of modes. The bike's only in that 10-foot width along Willow.
So you don't have any concerns about the 10-foot 47th Street with being a shared pedestrian bike path?
Well, yeah,
the
sorry.
I think the experience we have is the Capitol Crescent Trail going down to River Road, where the path there is shared and there are continual conflicts between pedestrians and bicyclists. So there's not a way you could make it a separate pedestrian cyclist path along 47th Street?
I think we'd have to defer to Parks and MCDOT for that. I think the design as is in accordance with the approved bicycle network for Montgomery County. So for the portion along Willow, it is approved as a separated bike lane. And then for the portion along 47th Street, it's approved as a side path, which is essentially a type of shared use path. So, and I don't have the background of all that, but.
Well, I just want to share a concern. That's
Sure.
That's a playground there with kids, and you've now constructed a pathway without a pedestrian separation. It's not going to be very safe for those kids. So I'm concerned about that.
Can I add something to this? So as it crosses through Elm Street Park, the playground is completely enclosed by both a retaining wall along the trail and a fence on top of it. So there won't be children. They won't be able to run from the playground onto the trail. Maybe you can, this is the, if you can point out the retaining wall, it runs the entire length of the Capitol Crescent Trail. Also, Correct
see
me
that.
if I'm wrong, but I believe for the majority of the length of the Capitol Crescent Trail, it is a shared use trail, is it not?
It
I-
is.
Yeah, I think I don't know what they're building along what the Purple Line is building, if there's a separate pedestrian path parallel to the Capitol Crescent Trail, but I know once it crosses Wisconsin, for the length of it, I think all the way to DC, it's a shared use path, the entire length, is it not?
It is, and it's problematic. So I guess my concern is even though the kids aren't going to be able to run, they have to get to and from the park. So you're creating a situation where you've got fairly, well, the bicyclist along a 10-foot path without a pedestrian separation. And that's concerning.
I think you're thinking specifically of those daycares that use
Well, and the people
playground
going to and
presently, and
from
they're
the
coming
park.
from downtown
Both.
Bethesda and walking their way. Yeah,
It's a playground area. It's
True.
unlike the Capitol Crescent Trail along the Purple Line.
true.
This is coming through an urban center with kids and people walking through it, and you're creating a pedestrian bicycle path. It's even different from the section of the Capitol Crescent Trail from downtown Bethesda to River
Yes,
Road, because there are no
separated.
parks there.
and it's also separated.
Yeah, and it's problematic. That, I don't know if you walk that very often or bike it. It is problematic having that kind of a path. So I'm very concerned that this is not a separated pedestrian bicycle sidewalk on 47th Street.
Even if it was even separated, you would still have the conflict of people having to cross the Capitol Crescent Trail to get to the playground.
Well, hopefully there's
So-
going to be crosswalks and crosswalk where they're going to be legitimately crossing. So
There will be. There will be.
I'm raising a concern.
Well,
Yes.
there's a school, there's a Georgetown something school that's on Elm Street. I forget the name of it. I apologize. But that's just one school in the area, little kids, I'm saying, but one school in the area that regularly uses the park today. So obviously a redesigned park will really attract more usage from these little kids, the little ones. Yeah.
So you can see, I think, where the lighter color trail crosses the Elm Street right of way, we call it the promenade, as it crosses through the park. That area has, we've spent quite a bit of time studying that area, and we've met with, it's a group of people with disabilities to talk about how to safely move people through that area, because we understand that that's sort of the most critical point in the park where the trail crosses the promenade. And so we've widened it. So, we're trying to improve the visibility as people are crossing through that area. Also, people coming out of the air rights tunnel, there is a grade that comes up the hill, so it'll automatically help to slow bicycle traffic as it's approaching that main area of conflict.
So the grade is ascending, not decent.
It's going down from the promenade. It's going down towards the air rights building. So as you're coming out of the air rights building, you're going up a slope that's about 4.5% actually. So that the grade should slow people coming in that direction. And then, and there's no way for a child to run from the playground across the trail at that point, because it's completely enclosed by walls and fencing. So the area of conflict is really where the Elm Street Promenade and the Capitol Crescent Trail cross. And that's, why we've spent so much time on this, looking at this area. And like I said, broadening the pavement, making it wider. So visibility is increased. There'll be signage there. We haven't really picked up these drawings. You can see in the lower right-hand corner, it says July of 2021, because all of our energy was shifted to the tunnel project. And these plans were sort of work on this stopped. So now we're picking this back up again, and we'll get more into the details of, what we need to do, whether there's a change in pavement, signage. There's a number of things that probably can be added here to increase the safety, but we understand that that this area is the area where the conflicts are most likely to occur.
Yes, Barney.
This is Barney Rush. Let me just follow up a bit on Rich's good point. I think what you just said, Linda, is very helpful in respect to how the play area itself will be protected. And by the way, we're all very excited to see a complete redesign for that playground. Okay, let's start off on that point. It's great to see that. So we're very happy that there's going to be a real redesign and an improvement of that whole area. I think what we also foresee, and this speaks really to Rich's point, that with the expanded farm women's market and the additional traffic that will bring, that you have to anticipate there'll be many more families who, will be hopefully having to make decisions as to whether they go to the water feature or play in the lawn or take their kids to the playground. And I think if I understood Rich properly, what he's really concerned with is the stretch that goes from the promenade back to Willow. And I may be mistaken here, but I think that, in fact, you can see the pathways. Yeah, stop right there. Okay. There is what would be helpful, I suppose, would be somehow to emphasize or to reset the pathway, which is in the park, so that it's more of a direct line or something to the playground, so that parents with their kids would realize that they had alternatives and would not automatically start walking on the bike trail. If they had a decent straight-lined alternative, I think that would help ameliorate the problem that I think Rich has correctly identified. But if all they see is that lovely pathway and they start walking on it, I can imagine there really could be congestion, crowded weekends, a lot of people going back and forth between the Farm Women's Market Park and the playground. I want one other question. I just want to ask about orientation of the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail. What happens to the utility poles and what happens to the pine trees that are there? When we looked at this several years ago, it was important for us to save the pine trees. I didn't know whether this still assumes they will be there, or are you suggesting they're going to be taken out?
I think there are about 7 trees that will be removed along there. Pardon me?
And the engagement with the community right in the center of the library. And at that point, there are various opportunities to walk and connect with the different programs within the library. Adjacent to that.
Was that a different meeting?
Apparently so.
It confused me a bit there. I thought maybe I was just really missing something, but no, Barney, I think that's a really good point. You can see where the crosswalk crosses Willow down there. And I think I think there may be a park trail connection. I can't really quite tell, but if there isn't, there should be.
There is a connection here now.
Yeah.
There's a
Okay.
connection.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe we can look at straightening that out a little bit, but I think sort of the main stem of the trail where your hand was just a minute ago, I mean, I think that is kind of a nice meandering. It's not that meandering. It's pretty straight alternative route to the Capitol Crescent Trail. And I know if I was walking my dog or my children, I would avoid the Capitol Crescent Trail because of all the bike traffic on it. When we were working on the little park project by Oarsman, I experienced firsthand what you were, the council person was talking about with, you aren't paying attention and you take one step out of, and, you're almost nailed by a bike because they're moving so quickly through there. So we're well aware of the conflicts through here. And we will continue to look at ways to make sure that these trails are as safe as they possibly can be for all the users.
Is it possible to have a protected light, if you will, for those who want to cross Willow from the park, the Elm Street Park itself? So parents, whatever, children, because to your point, Barney, about what are they going to choose? Are they going to choose Bethesda Market Park or both, you know, and little kids and all of their accoutrements that come with it? Is there consideration for protected light type of feature there?
That's a question, I guess, for either, you know, DOT or James. That's out of my wheelhouse.
So you're talking like a flashing beacon or something like that to cross the street at Willow Lane and 47?
Yes, I understand the county no longer uses yellow flashing lights
Yeah,
because it's confusing. So I was really thinking about something that would stop traffic, that would force people, including bikers, to just kind of temper it, because they're, you know, we haven't really talked about this, but Linda's well aware there's going to be traffic coming, vehicular traffic coming out from the Warnoff area, from the Bethesda Market Park. So we have vehicular traffic on Willow, vehicular traffic coming out from Bethesda Market Park. Then we have tripper buses and other delivery vehicles that make their way from Wisconsin onto Willow, trying to get that left onto 47th. There's a lot going on there. And I know that it wouldn't necessarily happen all at once, but certainly from a just feeling safer and pedestrian comfort perspective, having the ability to stop all traffic so that you can cross Willow might be something to consider.
So it's currently a three-way stop. I mean, proposed a three-way stop there. And we can look into whether a warrant, some other traffic is warranted. But I don't think that it will be, even, you know, even at the highest, it's an always stop. So. Well,
many of us on the council and residents traverse that area almost daily, whether it's pedestrian or otherwise. The issue is that is a little bit of road rage going on, because those non-parking spots that are in front of the retail areas on Willow people are parking there. And it's not being enforced to, you know, take care of that. It's forcing then other drivers to feel agitated by the situation, and it just kind of a cascade effect in terms of passing by pedestrians very closely. You know, there's lots of stuff going on in that intersection. So
we can definitely look into it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking if the always stop sign or a pedestrian activated light might be less than ideal. Even something as straightforward as a flex post or a paddle sign, just to say, you know, stop for pedestrians and crosswalk, might be enough to deter some of this active traffic going back and forth. But it's definitely something we would look into to make sure that we can at least slow down the traffic to make it safer to cross.
Honestly, you could go and just spend some time there on your own on any given weekend, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about.
No, please don't go on the weekend. Please go at 5 o'clock. No, because I drive home through Bethesda at 5:30 every day. So if you're making a left turn from Wisconsin Avenue onto Willow, well, first of all, if there's DOT people on here, maybe you guys can like fix the timing of that light, because it's off. And so anyway, I won't get into that point, but at that hour, I mean, traffic that's running through there and then, you know, turning around onto 47th Street is pretty bad. And it's only going to be worse once we have, you know, I don't know how many hundreds of people living on that property at the farmers market, at multifamily housing units there, and the attraction of the park, which is going to be wonderful, but there's just going to be a lot of traffic there. I don't know what the solution is, but it is it's not ideal. And so there's just going to be a lot of traffic there, around that same time, with kids coming to and from school, or the runners, doing their cross-country train. I mean, I think that deserves further study. It's not for us to figure out what the solutions are, but just please be aware that we're concerned about a lot of things going on there.
Understood.
This is Todd. Sorry, I don't believe Barney's questions about tree loss and utility pole relocation were answered.
By the way, we knew there were some small trees right along the street that were coming down, but there's the large pine trees that we had extensive discussion about several years ago. That's what I was interested in hearing about. Are those trees going to stay? They're very mature, and just want to make sure I know what the answer is.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Barney, which trees right now. I think I think the majority of trees that are coming out are closer up towards the promenade. But our parks arborist reviewed the plans, and I think at the time of the plans, the trees that are to be removed were identified at the time of the mandatory referral, and they were actually identified by number from the tree save plan that was approved as part of the mandatory referral. So these have been slated for removal for, at least the last 3 or 4 years. And I'm sorry, I can't remember if they're pines or not, but I know.
If someone could just get back to us on that. Again, I don't mind we aren't worried about the small trees that were on the median between the sidewalk and the street.
No,
It was
these
the
are
larger
some of the
pine trees that were inside the park.
Yeah, these are some of the bigger trees inside the park. And I will say, I know that we wouldn't necessarily just remove a healthy white pine, but they're becoming increasingly problematic as the climate is changing. They just we're having more issues with them with insects and diseases, and they're especially bad when we have when the branches get loaded with snow and ice, and they break, and they can become hazardous. So
Todd, has Tolbert Feather been engaged and looked at this plan for the trees?
No, he hasn't.
was he not involved during the mandatory referral at all?
I don't believe he was. I'd have to go back. How many years ago was that? 4 or 5?
I think it was was it 21?
It was
2020 or
2020. Yeah, 2021.
I'd have to refresh my memory and go back to see Barney. I don't believe he was involved in that.
Oh, anyway, I would still welcome an answer to what the status of those trees. I do recall we tried to make an effort to avoid taking them down. This was a long time ago when I was last engaged in this. So I just want to get updated on how it all came out.
Okay.
And the utility pole relocation?
Yeah, so the current plan is for those to be shifted into the buffer between the trail and the roadway.
I've got one other question, which is also just revisiting memory lane here. Way back, there was a discussion as to why the Capitol Crescent Trail would be on the south side of Willow instead of the north side of Willow, which obviously there are pros and cons, I know, but the pros are obvious to us, which is you avoid the interaction between pedestrians using the Farm Women's Market, and also alleviate the concern that Irene talked about of traffic using the Woonuff and with bicyclists cutting right across it. And could someone just refresh my memory on why, at the end of the day, the decision was taken to put the trail on the south side of Willow?
I would believe is to eliminate the bike vehicle conflicts that would occur on the south side, the driveways that occur there, the Papa John's, and there's a residence there. So by putting them on the east side, it avoids those conflicts.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your answer. How are we avoiding the
So
conflict?
it avoids the vehicle bike conflicts that would occur with all the driveways on the west side of 47th Street.
No, I'm not talking about 47th Street. I'm talking about Willow. North
Oh.
and what the bike, the trail is on the south side of Willow. And
Oh,
my question was why, I've forgotten what the reasons were to put it there instead of on the north side of Willow.
oh, I have to research that one for you. But it might be some of the similar type things.
Retail concerns?
Because they didn't want to give up the.
Okay, maybe that's the answer.
I think also if we look further west on the other side of 355, it helps tie into, the existing streetlight traffic and then the left turn lane movement onto Willow Lane itself.
Right.
I think we want, again, this is just based off what I'm seeing, but I was to say that it would help maintain that left moving traffic onto Willow Lane from 355, putting it on the south side as opposed to the north side.
My recollection too was that it was all about the crossing at Wisconsin because they're creating a larger crosswalk there. And I think it needs to be on the south side of Willow because it's closer to the corner. I don't, that intersection doesn't completely align, does it? Isn't it offset?
But Kevin's right too. It avoids, by doing it on the south side, it avoids the left turns, the southbound left turns onto eastbound Willow, southbound 355 left turns. So they're not in conflict, and it's probably to do with the signal timing.
There is a jog there from the Wisconsin onto Willow. They have to jog around.
I just said one more, Irene.
Oh, of course,
Okay.
yes.
The last one I want to raise goes actually to Irene's point about safety if you move to the screen to get to the intersection with 47th Street, right there. Goes to Irene's good point about concern of safety there. What about a raised sidewalk, or not a sidewalk, but a raised
I
platform
was thinking
speed
the
bump,
same
whatever you
thing.
call
We
that?
can look into that.
Okay, which, in other words, if you had something 8 or 10 feet wide, or even wider for bikes and pedestrians, then that would be a very powerful signal to the vehicular traffic that this is primarily not for them. This roadway really has to be shared. So if you could look into something that's very wide.
We can look at that intersection for, with even a higher level of safety based on your concern, right? Like the amount of foot traffic and bike traffic that's going to be there, and how vehicles come off 355 with a bit of energy that, we're trying to calm them. So we can look into that.
Thank you. That'd be very helpful.
Dan, I think that was looked at one point. I think like a raised crosswalk here and
Drainage issues.
drainage issues. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that is definitely an issue, thing with raised crosswalks. But we can look at it, right? There's a couple things in the toolbox we can look at. So we'll revisit that based on your concerns.
Thank you. I have to think if there was a drainage issue, wouldn't you just put a pipe through it or something? But I'm not sure why that's a compelling problem to prevent
a raised crosswalk. So it's either flowing left or right, and then you have to have a drainage structure nearby to tie into it, because there's other things in the ground. But it can be looked at.
One of the overall points I think we all want to leave you with is to contemplate a really different intersection in the future that's going to have a really active farm women's market with a lot of people coming to shop, people using the park, and a lot of families with young kids wanting to use that playground. So really thinking about their safety and how they get from those new amenities and facilities to a really wonderful new playground, which by virtue of sort of where things are located, has to be fairly far, relatively far away on the opposite side of Elm Street Park. But really thinking about the pathway for those pedestrians, kids, and making that a focus of your review. I think that's one of the messages here that we want to make sure you take away with and think that through holistically.
Okay. Any other? I have a couple things to say, but Todd, was there anything else that you wanted to add for the moment?
Dave has found the tree removal and protection plan with the proposed replacement trees, so he can share that with you. Also, if I'm not mistaken, we are losing a 1 metered parking space that is the town of the Long Willow. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So someone had mentioned before that the Washington Bicyclist Association had taken a look and they were fine. For reasons I'm not entirely clear, the Washington Bicyclist Association, or at least a representative, contacted the town specifically about all of this because there were some concerns they have. And I don't know, Todd, if those were written out or if there was just kind of an overall expression of concern. But just wanted to highlight that there might be some additional commentary coming from that association.
Yeah, there was some initial outreach from WAVA, and then secondary outreach or follow-up outreach about attending tonight's meeting. But Dan, you spoke with him, correct? Was it Kevin or Dan? I can't remember. Just which.
Oh, with Tony Mauro?
Yeah.
His concern was the one that started the conversation about the mixing point at the promenade of the bikes and what hopefully will be a highly bike and pedestrian area, right? People are walking down the promenade to get to Wisconsin and to the metro station, and people are hopefully will be using the trail. So the main concern was how they crossed there, right? Like the big conflict zone that Linda touched on earlier. So we're aware of that and going to design it appropriately.
So this leads me to another point my colleagues may or may not know. A couple of days ago, we found out that there's a public hearing about this section occurring on Tuesday, the 16th of July. And this is the public hearing for the county to understand better whatever the concerns might be. Whenever we talked, it might have been yesterday or the day before, we asked, is there any way to delay this hearing? Because we certainly didn't have a chance to take a look and ask the questions that we have today. And I understand just from our conversation right now, there's a few more things that need to be looked at. Can this hearing be delayed a little bit? And my understanding is that it's just going to be one hearing, period. There won't be any other consideration. So we're at 70% design. Well, let me know. Maybe I misunderstood something.
No, that's correct. But the point of the hearing is to get the concern. So I don't know that delaying it is useful. Is to hear the concerns and be able to make the changes as needed.
I guess because the town, we haven't yet started or continued our discussions on the memorandum of understanding. Just kind of wondering how, and just trying to figure out the timing of all this, because certainly, as we've expressed concerns this evening, we want to get those answers and get that going. They're just wondering if we can instead have a public hearing discussion when there's a bit more, details in place around the design. And then that gives an opportunity for the greater community to comment on what is a complicated section of this Capitol Crescent surface trail. At least we're viewing it as a bit more complicated than normal.
I would just say, I think it's more advantageous to get the comments now and have a chance to react to them.
Well, let me go back to your slides. This design was done in 2021. That's almost 4 years ago. And things have changed dramatically with the farm women's market and the Purple Line itself. And I think it would be useful for you guys to rethink some of the things that we brought up and then present that as at a public hearing rather than a design that's over 3 years old. So it doesn't make any sense to present something to the public that you know you're going to refine. That just doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's the whole point of the public hearing, so. To get
Public
comments.
hearing is to get input on something that's reasonable, and you haven't reasoned this out completely yet. It's been a long time since that design was done. And I don't want to be adversarial, but that is a long time. And the Farm Women's Market designs and the Purple Line trail designs have all migrated since that point in time. So you've
Either
heard our
that-
concerns.
Or
so-
either that, or there's a second public hearing once,
Fine,
the initial concerns are gathered next Tuesday. And then after there's an opportunity to address that with an updated design from 2024 or whenever it's going to be, then have another hearing on that so that residents can further weigh in.
Yeah, and I don't see a rush because as you said, there's still not a concern, there's still a discussion going on about which project goes forward first. So this isn't something that has to happen within the next 3 months. The
earlier we get the comments, the easier it is to make the adjustment. So I'll bring it up to my division chief to see if he thinks he wants to delay it, and we'll get back to you.
Either that or have think about holding a second public hearing after an updated.
Parks is planning on having a hearing on the park design at some point, probably this fall. And I don't know, I'm only speaking for parks here. The park drawings have not advanced since July of 2021, but it was my understanding that DOT's phase 2 drawings have advanced since 2021. Is that the case? And also, in terms of timing, we were told that DOT was committed to having these improvements in place by the time that the Capitol Crescent Trail opened now, which is going to open before the Purple Line, which they're saying the summer of 2026. So there is some urgency to keep marching forward because at least from, again, the parks perspective, that we've got a long ways to go in the design of the park yet. And the construction of the park, because there are walls and, there's utilities that need to be brought in and significant grading is, it will take, I don't know, maybe if Parks was doing the project, it would probably take almost a year to construct it. So, there is some urgency to keep this moving ahead.
And
Again, we're not
the public hearing is open, right? So like comments can be received after it as well.
Yeah, I believe through August the 2nd, but that's not going to be an updated design for residents to comment on by August the 2nd. I might be wrong. I thought it was early August. Apologies.
Yeah, we usually keep it open for a few weeks.
So you didn't answer her question. Is there a design update from the 2021? Have you?
Yes,
do you have,
and this is what we're showing you as our latest design. What is shown here?
the 2021 designs that you put up are the
Well,
ones.
that was the park portion of it.
That was just the park.
Yeah, just to clarify, the portion of the trail along Willow and 47th Street, we've submitted a 70% plan to the county and got comments, I think in May. Which I think, Todd, you hopefully got a copy of.
And that's what's shown on your charts.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Then I have to ask my colleagues, do you want me to testify on Tuesday for the public hearing? I have 2 days to turn something around if you do. And
So you can provide testimony after the hearing as well. That's the record states so
who is the public hearing in front of?
the public.
Who from the county
Is conducting the hearing.
is conducting the hearing? Thank you.
Oh, we have a hearing officer assigned, and and then the DOT does most of the presenting.
But it's a hearing officer who's the actual party that's listening to all the commentary?
Correct. I mean, they're a county employee. They're usually a division chief from a different division within the DOT.
Okay. Who's the division chief that's directly responsible for this project?
He's my boss. He's Joe's Tamana. He's the acting division chief.
Joe's. Okay, we know Joe's. All right.
Yeah.
But it would be a different division chief who would act as the hearing officer to be at the public hearing.
Correct. And Kevin Min might know.
Yeah, we have Michael Baylor assigned for the hearing.
Oh,
So he's our traffic engineering.
right. Okay,
operations.
that's helpful to know. Then I would recommend, my personal view is if you could willing to do it, it'd be good to make some points. Michael's a good guy.
yeah, he is. He is. They both are. Okay. I have to sign up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Were there any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for your time and thanks for fielding our questions this evening. Pretty much what we have talked about tonight will be replicated and put into commentary. And we look forward to seeing the updated design and being told, I guess, as the memorandum of understanding conversations continue, to keep abreast of these changes as well, updates in the design.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you for having us and allowing us to do this presentation. So appreciate it.
Great. All right, well, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll start the town council meeting. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. Will everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started with the June 24 financial report. Rich, whenever you're ready.
Well, it's the end of our fiscal year. June, at the end of June is the end of our fiscal year. And this year, I think it's exemplary. We've actually received 104% of our budgeted operating revenue, and we've spent about 88% of our operating expenditures. So we're pretty much right on target in terms of what we projected and what we've spent. I do want to highlight that 88% expenditure rate will go up because we haven't received all the invoices for the fourth quarter yet. So it's probably going to be pretty close to what we've estimated. Other than that, there's nothing significant to report. There was one item, if you looked at the report, it's shows we have 1,000% increase in other revenue under the miscellaneous account, and it's because we got a large disbursement from a court case that we were party to involving water discharge, and so we got a payment of about $10,000 from that part. So that's why it's that 1,000%. But other than that, we're doing very well.
Thank you. Any questions? Usually when you win a court case, you get a check for 10 cents. So there you
Yeah,
go.
10,000 is nice.
Thank you very much. I know most of what will be in the town manager's report will be discussed this evening, but Todd, you're welcome to summarize it, or we can, work our way through the agenda accordingly.
Sure. Thanks.
your,
There's
yes.
just one point I want to make about the purple line alignment, the request of the town to modify the fencing and barriers along the alignment adjacent to the town to address residents' privacy and safety concerns. And that was to be on the agenda tonight for council consideration of funding for that based on an estimate or a revised estimate that we were supposed to get from Purple Line officials. However, as the council knows, but this is for the edification of those in attendance, they weren't able to get that revised estimate in time. They're working with their fabricator who doesn't make semi-opaque screens and panels, but they're looking into aftermarket options for that. And so they said that a September decision by the council on funding for these improvements or potential funding for these improvements won't delay anything on their part. So we will schedule that for the September 11th meeting. We also, just a quick update on Zimmerman Park renovations and Copeland Run stabilization. I think we're on track to start making those improvements in early to mid-August and hopefully continue on through the next month or so to complete those. And those are just the two projects that I wanted to highlight for the council and the public.
Thank you, Todd. Any questions or comments? The crosswalk upgrade over East-West Highway, all of the equipment has been installed, the lights and everything. It just needs to be activated. So I think they're on target for the end of this month to get that right on time for the new school year. So that's fantastic. Thank you very much. So we now move on to public comments. So there is a public hearing this evening on the Leland Street East Avenue intersection. That's not going to be yet addressed. But if there's anything else that folks want to provide comments on, including attainable housing, the Bethesda Market Park, anything to do with what might be on your hearts and minds, you're very welcome to come on up and provide comments. Yes, sir, please. And just state your name and address for the record. Thank you. Not sure it's on. Great.
Hi. Oh, is it working now?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Adam Arkell. I live on Meadow Lane. I wanted to come and use the public comment phase of the meeting today to express for my part my growing concern with regard to the attainable housing plan that I've seen, the information that I've seen with regard to this. I'll emphasize my mind remains open, but I am concerned about what I've seen. This looks to me very much like a plan that that can only result in congestion and in density and in endless construction for this town with very little benefit for the people who are living here. I really am wrestling, trying to understand how this plan will truly result in achieving its stated goal. In other words, attainable housing for what's often referred to as the middle range of housing needs. I understand that that's important, but I'm just not sure I understand how the plan is going to achieve that. I think I have concern that this plan is grossly overbroad and has drastic implications for thousands of people living in this county. I'm a little bit alarmed that I don't see the county council making an effort proactively to explain in plain English to people, to affected people, what the implications of this plan could be, what this means for homeowners. This is starting to look to me like a train that's on some sort of auto mode that's designed to achieve its goal without getting real input from people. So this looks to me like something that's moving very quickly. That I have this concern that at least at the county level, there are a lot of people who seem to have a predisposition to get this approved without taking into account the very real concerns that homeowners here would have. It's too much too fast. I think also there's need to digest. There are a lot of changes at the state level that were just enacted into law, and I don't understand how these are going to play out for us. So we have the changes enacted at the state level, while this is also being moved forward. In addition to that, we're also wrestling with all of these very significant projects that are at the periphery of the town. And there again, I'm having difficulty imagining what our town is going to look like when all of this is done. So basically, this is I'm trying to state in broad concerns, in a broad way, my concerns. I haven't submitted written comments yet, but I do plan to. And again, I'll emphasize my mind is open, but I thought it would be important to come and state how I feel right now. Thank you.
Very much appreciated. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hey, everybody. My name is Ario Kashani. I'm at 4509 Leland Street. Comments largely about the Bethesda Market Park. Barney, thank you. I exchanged a couple emails. Thank you for the quick responses. One main comment and concern that I want to share with you all. We live on 46th Street. So we're technically 4509 Leland, but the front of our house is on 46th Street. So right across the street from what will be the southern corner of the first part of the park that's going to be built. And as we're very excited about the park. First of all, it's amazing. I mean, it's going to be a parking lot that's going to turn into a park. Can't really go from worst to best in that context. But the main concern and worry we have, really, the biggest one, is around the stage, and in particular around events that are going to be happening there or that might be happening there. And it's on two fronts. One is both of them mainly around noise. We have two young children, and while we are on the edge of Bethesda and Wisconsin Avenue, we're on the kind of like the densest part of the town. We do care a lot also about being able to, use our yard and be in our house in peace and quiet during the daytime, on the weekends, or even especially at night. And I know some of the renderings had like nighttime concerts and stuff. So we just wanted to communicate our worry and concern about the stage. We're not strictly opposed to a stage existing there. I think there's a lot of other uses also. Barney mentioned just as a shade, right? A place for people to have lunch. But around the process for permitting or allowing events, and around just the kind of expectations that the county and the town will have around what is happening there, when, how frequently. I mean, I know, for example, noise allowance and stuff is drastically different at night than at the day. But if we have, concerts all day, Saturday and Sunday too, just during the day, that will have a drastic effect on our quality of life as well. So just wanted to communicate that as you all are considering what the final kind of commitment of the town is going to be, and what your communications are. That's something that really matters a lot to us, as the people who likely in the town will be most affected directly by or the people on 46th Street are going to be the most affected directly by this development in a way that very few others can really comprehend, in terms of increase in traffic, increase in people, and most importantly, increase in noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So Grant Davies from 4313 Bradley Lane, which is on the corner of East and Bradley. I wanted to comment on the park as well. I understand the concerns about noise, because I think we do need I don't know whether it's regulations, and I don't know what the role of the town is in governing regulations, or at least agreeing with the county what's an acceptable level. From a personal perspective, and my wife's name is Carol Ann, and Carol Ann and I fully support the park and the amenities. I mean, we've lived here 40 years, and there's been a need for that kind of facility, particularly on the east side of the town. There's not much there. I actually went out today and walked the whole area with the comments that were made in town neighbors to try and get a sense of what it would look like and what I could imagine. And it really is a phenomenal asset that the town will use and will have. In terms of traffic, I think there is an issue. We live on the corner of Bradley and East, and those of you that like to turn left off of Bradley at 5 o'clock at night, there's a ton of traffic that comes through there. So I think there's an equity issue when we look across the community. But I do understand those concerns, and I understand with young kids and what I'll call noise regulation. Somehow we need something. You shouldn't have your whole life turned over because of a park. But so we're fully supportive, but we recognize there has to be some kind of regulation and stipulations, and maybe we can put that into the agreements with the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone on the line that would like to make a comment? Okay, seeing no hands, public comments are closed. So now we're going to enter into our public hearing, specifically based on improvement plan for Leland Street and the East Avenue intersection at Leland Street. This has been a 6-7 month effort. I'm sorry, I'll just introduce, and then Carol, you can.
Real quick, the agenda said it would start at 7:30, so I think there's a bunch of people planning to come at 7:30.
Okay. If it's okay with the council, we can move into the first discussion and then bounce back over to the hearing, if that's all right. Okay. Thank you, Carol. We'll just 10 minutes. So this first, very timely. So the first topic for discussion is about Bethesda Market Park and the discussion and possible introduction of a resolution. So if you, Barney, I'll turn it over to you. And then
I'm happy to start, but probably take more than 10 minutes. I don't know if you want to start the public hearing.
Yeah, let's see how far we can get, and then.
Yeah, I think a few preliminary comments. First of all, we're very grateful for, ultimately came to about 60 or so comments that came into the town office. And the very vast majority of them were very favorable with comments, I should say. There were some who just said great, others said great, but, and but was about a specific issue. And then there were also some who had very serious reservations. And then there were some who were outright opposed for a variety of reasons, dealing with cost or developer input or whatever. So overall, it was certainly very favorable, but we've taken the comments very seriously, have put together a compendium for ourselves to review and to make sure that we transmit those comments to the Parks Department, to the landscape architect, and to the developers, because we want to make sure those comments are taken very seriously. There are a number that are very helpful to us, thinking through very carefully issues about the dog park, about proper separation of activities, many comments about being not happy at all with the design of the shade structure. So we've taken that to heart. But I think in general, there was a lot of support for most of the amenities, if not all of them. But again, with comments, and also one other big issue that was brought up was the importance of careful maintenance, and people really being concerned that it would be properly maintained. So we've taken all that on board. What we had said to the town was that we would contemplate voting tonight, but what we'd like to do as an alternative is to tonight have a discussion of the resolution, which my colleagues have, in order that we could agree on the final wording of that resolution. And then that resolution will be made public to the town residents tomorrow or on Friday. And we are going to thinking about having a special meeting 2 weeks from today to actually vote, so that residents will be able to see the resolution. We can get comments on that, potentially make changes if we feel warranted, but we do give time for that review. The reason why, so that's what we think is appropriate in terms of process. In terms of on the other side, what also matters about this, and the reason why there is some urgency for the council, in my view, to consider this, is that after a long period of time of great delay, which many of you are aware of because you'll have noted that the first presentation of the plans was in March of 2023, and then there was a long gap until they were represented. We finally are beginning to get more traction and more commitment, more progress, especially between the county and the developers in regard to the contract that they have to enter into, which transfers the land to the developers to build, and then ultimately has the county buying back a parking lot under the ground. And after that having been stalled a very long time, there's now a sign that they're finally closing in on that agreement and making real headway. Meanwhile, the developers are saying that once that is done, they can then really be very serious about the design effort they have to undertake so that they can submit a site plan, which is the next official document that must be presented. And we're very eager to have that done or submitted this calendar year, but they need 4 months work or more on that. So one of the components that they have to take into account is what in fact they can look to as the budget for the park overall. And the current budget, as we've made clear in our town criers, basically is inadequate even for the base park, let alone a decent level of contingencies, let alone an active park of some number of amenities. So the reason that I would encourage us to take a vote 2 weeks from now is that if we pass it, that will give clarity to the designers for the amount of money they have to work with as they go forward. So that's the thought. In terms of the resolution itself, basically it sets out a large number of whereases, which simply basically describe the history of how we got to where we are, but all have importance. And I would encourage all of you who will have a chance to look at this to read through that. It does discuss about the origin of the funding, the allocation of it, the fact that we also, separate from the $7.5 million we're talking about that the town might be putting in, we also will be the channel for a further $1.5 million from the state. Not our money, but the state has said, we want the town of Chevy Chase responsible for spending this money on the parks. So that actually gives us a total coffer, if you will, of $9 million if we approve the $3 million additional amount. We also make the point that, which we've also said publicly before, that of the $3 million, and this is just a matter of perspective, but we do want people to recall that the town received a gift from the federal government of $2.4 million from the ARPA legislation that was passed at the beginning of the Biden administration. And we have managed to spend just over $100,000 of it to support Wonders. We have spent most of the rest, but in a sense used it to fund some operating costs, which in turn have raised our reserves. So in the grand scheme of things, it shifted money into the reserves. But in the mind of many of us looking at this, to a large extent, if we were to approve this appropriation, we are basically taking money that was initially passed by Congress to be used for infrastructure and ultimately using it for infrastructure, just to put that in context of the source and use of the money. So those are the whereas clauses. Then we appropriate the money, and we do use the term appropriation, but it is a very conditional appropriation. And I think this is something as well that I would encourage everybody to be mindful of. These conditions in a simpler form were in the previous resolution. So there's nothing that is substantively new here, but it is laid out in much more detail because we now have a lot more information about the actual agreements that have to be signed. So it basically stipulates that our money will not go in until this agreement that I just mentioned with the county and the parks and the developers is done, until an agreement between the Parks Department and the developers is done. And very importantly, until there's an agreement between the town and the Parks Department, because we will be jointly funding the park. And we want to make sure that that final agreement includes several things that are very important to us. An approved budget, which specifies the line items and also delineates how much money is being spent on the park on lot 24, as well as on lot 10. One of the commitments the town has been very clear about from the beginning, going back 8 years when we started this process, was we wanted to make sure there was going to be money to develop the full park. And we were actually scared that money would be spent on the park that everyone will initially focus on, lot 24, right behind the Farmers Market. And then now the one across the street, we don't have enough money for that. Let's build housing there. So we want to make sure that there is a really hard view of the funds that will make clear that there's enough money, and we and the Parks Department who are funding the park have enough money to build out the entire park. Another very important condition is, and it relates to the issues that have been raised, is that there is an agreement to cover the programming of the park, and we're going to specify the regulations for noise, because that is something that we take on board as very important and which we absolutely have to have. So that's going to be clearly in the resolution. We also will be discussing that we want to be assured about the maintenance for the park. That's something we have to have further discussions with the county, with the Parks Department as well. The final thing that's set out is how the money will be appropriated. Historically, going back to the first round of all this, we had agreed that out of the $4.5 million that the town was going to put in, about $1 million would help out with the garage. As you know, that you don't get the park without the garage. It's essentially one large project. But we always knew that our residents cared more about putting money directed most of the money into the park. And there's just $1 million going to the garage. The rest of the garage costs have been paid by the county and by the developer through their density payments. But what we making clear here is that the additional money that the town would be investing will only be focused on the park. That's where it's going. And also, it is not committed until we get the other matching money that we have said is a condition for our involvement. So we aren't talking about $3 million in total. We're talking about $5 million in total that the budget will be increased by. We would put in $3 million. We're going to pull in the remaining $500,000 we haven't yet put into the budget from the state, which will be channeled through us, but it's state money, and $1.5 million, which will come. Basically, the backstop will be the Parks Department. If they can find private sources, that's fine, but otherwise they have to be good for that $1.5 million. So those are the conditions that are in that resolution, and they all have to be met in order for us to then enter into legally binding agreements for us to contribute. So yes, it's an appropriation, but it's a conditional one, and envisions our staying involved as a very major stakeholder through a long process, which will undertake a lot of additional design, a lot of work on what exactly the amenities are going to look like. We all just saw conceptual drawings, not final drawings. And we will have to be at the table through that whole process. So it's going to be a steady engagement. But I will just state from I'm speaking as one council member, my personal view is that this $3 million as an embedded amount of a $5 million increment is going to make a huge difference in the certainty of this park getting done and getting done to a quality level that we'd like to see our residents be able to enjoy. So that's, I think, what I wanted to say as an overview. I can take some questions about, so I left a couple of brackets in the wording, but at first, if there are any other general questions or comments from my colleagues, I'd be happy.
No, thank you, Barney. You've done a phenomenal job on pulling all this together. I did want to mention that one of the other things that you put in the resolution is that the park is going to be maintained as a public park in perpetuity. So that's another important fact. They're not going to be able to go and change the nature of the park on us at some point in time. And I just wanted you to thank you.
I also wanted to mention that part of in the clause is about if there are traffic and parking considerations, since those have been a lot of comments that have come from residents that as a council, we are going to be looking at all of that and addressing that accordingly. So
that's a very good point. I it's a whereas, but it matters, which is our commitment as a council to make sure that we undertake the commitment to parking and recognize that that's a really, well, become a very major issue. And yes, we have the funds to enforce that, hire someone as necessary. Make sure that people know that if they just want to stop in for that sandwich will cost $12.95 plus $50. You might think twice about finding a place that only costs $12.95, $3 if they actually go to the garage. So anyway, that's that. I'm glad you pointed that out. That's also in the resolution, one of the warehouses.
Yeah. Any comments? Questions?
I guess what I really just wanted to make, there's one place where I left in brackets, and I wanted to, actually there were two brackets that I wanted to get my colleagues' comments on. One was that in the language of the first condition.
Barney, can I interrupt you a second? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I turned off my mic. I forgot to.
Thanks.
Okay. Had it been off the whole time?
No.
Okay,
no.
just now, sorry. In the first condition, we say that the town continues to be a fully engaged stakeholder in the park with the Parks Department and the developer in the review and decisions made regarding the designs and budget for the park and related matters, including a determination of the final set of amenities to be included in the park. Alternatively, we would list those amenities. My personal view is it's probably better for us to let it be flexible, but I'd wanted to just check to see if that was okay with residents, with my colleagues in the council.
I commented to you, I think, and my thought is that it should be the determination of the final set of amenities.
Okay.
To be included in the plan.
All right.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. And the other one. Okay. And the other one was in the last condition, which is that the town will collaborate with the Parks Department in the programming of the park in accordance with an agreement. That was the language from the previous resolution, authorizing the $4.5 million. So we've long had that particular condition in our resolution, but that we would specifically add words relating to regulations, appropriate regulations regarding sound. So if that's all right, I'll be happy to add that.
Yep.
Okay, if that's okay, I guess we need to have a resolution to introduce a resolution. Is that how that works, Todd?
A
Yes,
public
that's
hearing.
okay.
That would, yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Ron, go ahead if you were going to speak up.
Well, you don't have to, by motion, authorize the resolution to be drafted. Once it is drafted and introduced, then you can have a motion to adopt it at that time. You don't have to have a separate motion today.
Well, I guess what I'm looking for is at least some agreement that we will proceed with this draft resolution, publish it, and have a public hearing at a special council meeting 2 weeks from tonight.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, then it could be a motion to introduce tonight.
A motion to introduce as amended just now for a public hearing scheduled for July 24th.
Motion, who's making that motion? And we're going to lose power.
So moved.
Go ahead, so moved. Second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
The resolution will be distributed to this draft version via town crier tomorrow, some point, so that everyone can read and comment on that. We can, we'll be receiving comments up through the public hearing, which will take place on July the 24th. It will be a virtual public hearing. It will not take place in this room, in other words.
And out of deference to my vacation schedule, since I'll be in England, I've asked my colleagues if they would be willing to let it start a little bit early.
5 p.m. if we can accommodate.
So, okay.
See the dedication of our council. Okay, so 5 p.m. July 24th, and tomorrow we'll be distributing the draft version of this resolution.
Okay.
Thank you, Barney. Thanks for all of your hard work on this. This is getting closer. We're one step closer.
That's right.
And as I'd like to say, it's better than the alternative, which is having high rises on those two lots. I'd rather see parks of whatever sort. So great. So now I guess we can move back to the originally scheduled programming, which is public hearing. Sorry, I'm just bringing it up. Okay. So for the last 22, 23 years, the town office has received complaints from residents over time about this particular intersection. Truth is that if the road were to be constructed today, it would definitely not look as it does today. And they, there were the basic issues were sight lines, folks who were driving. If they were driving south on Leland, trying to take a right onto the continuation of Leland, it's very difficult to see if there were oncoming cars or trucks. And then alongside that, a lot of pedestrian activity as those, students who live on the western part of the town trying to get to Chevy Chase Elementary School or other areas. So over time, it has just accumulated. The Public Services Committee last year kind of conducted a public campaign, if you will, of let us know what the issues might be as it relates to pedestrian, bicyclist, vehicular safety. And this was one of the top complaints that we received, this particular intersection. So the Public Services Committee, under the chairmanship of Howard Burkhoff, a very able chairmanship, really studied this since I think started up in November of last year. And over these last few months, I was liaison up until a month or so ago. We met with area residents, went through 4 or 5 options, trying to take into account the various inputs, various comments, various questions that we had, and frankly, some requests as well. And all alongside, in parallel with that, working with our traffic engineer, as well as with Dave Walton, to make sure everything was still up to code as it relates to county standards and best practices. What has been put in front of residents for consideration, and thank you for the rain. I don't know who we have to thank for that, but finally the rain has come. Something happened, who knows? Maybe they just needed to know we were talking about this now. That we're now at a point that residents are to comment. We want to hear from you this evening on your thoughts about this particular intersection improvement. With that, I will open it up to all those that would like. We've received and read all the emails that have come in and the different questions that have been answered, mostly by Dave, but some have been by Joe Coutreau as well, our traffic engineer. We've read all of that, but we want to hear from you. So with that, we'll open up the public hearing. Whoever would like to go first, come on up. Please, thank you.
I'm Jan Bogro. I live at 4309 Thornapple for 40 years. And so I know this intersection quite well. And I can understand if you've had a lot of complaints about it, wanting to make changes, but I'm in total disagreement with how it's been designed. And I want to preface what I say by with the fact that my dad was the driving instructor for the New York City Police. And one of the things we had to do in driver education in New York was drive around and evaluate intersections and other hazards. So I'm very aware of what works and what doesn't. And I have been driving up to where the white lines have been drawn, the new stop line, and then trying to get around. And it's quite difficult when a car is headed east on Leland, comes to the stop sign and then wants to come around, and there is not enough room and for both of us to get through. And to solidify my view, I had a neighbor head east on Leland, come to the stop sign as I came up around, and we almost hit each other because and we were going so slowly, there wasn't enough room with that new sidewalk that's in one of us was, or me, coming up would have had to go up on the sidewalk. So I don't think it's a very well thought out. I know he's made many plans. We've had different options, but creating that new sidewalk is really a problem because there isn't enough room to get around the curve, and I'm very concerned about it. And the one other thing I'd like to add that is not about the curve and the stop sign is we desperately need a stop sign at the intersection of Leland and East. When people are coming up off of Bradley on East up to Leland, there's a stop sign there, and they do stop. I see them all the time. But coming the other direction toward the path and then around the curve to the right, they just whiz through that on the wrong side of the road. And there have been 2 cars hit that were parked on East right there. So that I would like that looked at too, to add another stop sign there. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
So Grant Davies, and as I said, I live on corner of Bradley and East. And I'm out on East walking or driving constantly. And the challenge, and to echo the issue about turning onto East, the trucks turning, when they come off of Leland onto East, I don't think they're going to be able to make the corner. And I don't know, David, if you've looked at that or not, but I can assure you, and the trucks that I see going through there, and primarily either landscaping trucks or construction ones. And then when you get to the semi-trailers, they make the corner, but it is really difficult. And I'm not sure whether there shouldn't be, they shouldn't allow trucks to make that either go straight or make the left turn. And I just don't know whether you looked at that or not. That was a big concern that I saw coming on.
Grant, can I, this is a clarification. I want to make sure which, are you talking about the elbow turn on Leland going into East, or are you talking about Upper Leland going into Lower Leland?
The trucks come up Leland and are turning left onto East. And with the sidewalk there, what I'm not sure, and I couldn't tell from the design, I looked pretty closely. I think they're going to have immense problems trying to make that corner, and coming the other way, it's going to be even more difficult for them. So we really need to look at, it's not just cars, it's the trucks as well. And the other thing I see when I'm walking is bikes come around that corner really quickly. They fly around that corner, which I think is just a risk. I mean, they shouldn't be doing it, but it's just a reality.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, I'm Miriam Goldberg. I live at 4401 Leland Street. So it's the corner of Leland and 44th. And so I make that turn, you know, my driveway is on 44th Street. So I very frequently have to do that left turn. And when I first moved to the neighborhood, cars were not allowed to park on Leland past the corner of where the corner begins. In other words, past where 4400 Leland Street is. And at some point, and for a long time, like I know, Dave, if when there were cars parked there, occasionally cars, you know, who didn't know or didn't notice or whatever would be parked there. And because it was so obviously dangerous, I would usually come down and talk to you, and you agreed that it wasn't, I mean, it seemed clear that it wasn't safe to have cars there. And we would either, you know, sometimes I put a note on a windshield, or I remember when Patrick Keating was building a house there and he had trucks parked there. And I just mentioned it to him. And he immediately told his drivers, to park in the driveway of the house he was building. And, so, but now there are, at some point, I noticed a car parking there. This is like 10 years ago or something. I went to, I think it was the new owner of a new house there that had been rebuilt. Excuse me. And I saw her outside and I went over to tell her, that there wasn't parking allowed there. And then I looked and I saw that the no parking sign was no longer there and that there was parking allowed there. But there really should not be parking allowed there. So I noticed on the map that you sent out, there's a place where it has a little red line and it says that there would be no parking for like, 150, no parking or standing. But I would just say that line needs to be extended up to one more driveway so that you can make the left turn out of Leland Street without being forced into the lane where the oncoming traffic is. That's what the issue is. And I don't know, it might be helped by having a longer, it does look like it will help the sight line somewhat to be able to see more of the cars, but I don't think it will solve that problem. I still have to make my left turn. If there's a car there, I have to make my left turn and be in the lane facing oncoming traffic until I get past the parked cars. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Lee Jacobson, West Hero. We live at the corner of 44th and Leland.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Lee Jacobson.
Pull the microphone close to you. Up.
There, how's that?
That's better.
Okay. So we've been living there for 2.5 years now. And we've, in addition to the problem Missy has turning left onto 44th Street, there's tremendous problems, people coming up 44th Street and trying to make a left where those two parked cars are, okay? And there's generally always a car there. And so when you make that left turn, by necessity, you're in the oncoming lane, okay? And then you have to make this unnatural move around there to try to get over to the stop sign and stop at the stop sign before somebody comes across the other way. So there's always this conflicts between these cars coming through that particular point, and eliminating those two parking spaces, putting it back, I guess, to the way it was before we were here would be very helpful. Okay.
That's a clarification. Are we talking about parking spaces on the south side of Leland?
Yes, south side.
What they're talking about is they come here, they're forced over into this lane.
Oh, because we permit parking here. Got it. Okay, thank you.
It's a weird thing, and people, because the line of sight, in fact, because the two cars are there, you have to kind of work your way over to the left side to get by there going east. And then there's the stop sign, and it's a confusing, it's not a calming effect for the intersections.
Thank you.
I'm Carol Jacobson, also live at 40 at the corner of so far, yeah, from Leland. And just one more addendum to what Lee said and what Missy said. And that is for buses, the school buses from Montgomery County twice a day. I think it's the French school. There's a school that has like a purple blue bus. When they come up the hill, they come up from the Lawton Center direction, up the hill to on 44th to Leland, and make a right to head over to East. They go over the curb a large percentage of the time, and the curb is right where the Pepco power line pole is. Now, about a year and a half ago, we mentioned that, and Dave had the curb rebuilt. It was kind of destroyed. It got rebuilt. Missy's curb also got, I think, did yours get rebuilt at the same time, I think? But already now you can see all the black tire marks on our curb where the buses, they go over the curb, and on hers, you can see the dirt tracks through her yard. So that just kind of reinforces if you observe that. And yeah, and in this new design, you've made a point of the T intersection at Leland and East of no parking at the top of the T. However, there's a T at 44th and Leland, and there is parking at the top of the T there. So that's just, just as in terms of the rationale for all of that, that's just a little more background. And they each have a driveway, yeah. And we have loads of parking in front of our house because we don't need to use any of it. It's all there available. We can park 3 cars in our driveway, 4 cars, yeah. Now, I just want to comment on another aspect of the plan. We participated, thankfully, in the meetings, monthly meetings of the committee, and we had suggestions, I guess, other alternatives we proposed, like preferences, like continuing the sidewalk that goes up 44th and just crossing Leland at that point, which would help enable access for pedestrians going both to the elementary school and the ultimate destination of the bus stop at the bottom of the hill at Willow, and also to the Lawton Center, since that seems to be a major traffic pattern. Anybody coming from the Wisconsin end of Leland, a few blocks over, is in this current design is not going to walk all the way over to East to cross the street and then walk all the way back to go down 44th to come to the Lawton Center. And that was all agreed to. And so there will be jaywalkers, of course. There always are jaywalkers for any property that doesn't have a sidewalk in front of their house. What I wanted to comment on, though, was the team did a really thoughtful job. They worked and worked and worked. They tried to accommodate all the neighbors. I guess 28 houses got notified to attend these monthly meetings and provide input, and there was input. In this final design, though it's not my preference, there's one 5-foot stretch of sidewalk, and it's between the 2 poles on the north side of Leland Street. And the 5-foot sidewalk is there because it can be there. There's enough space it's adjacent to the curb. So it's like this sidewalk right out here. It's adjacent to the curb. And it's proposed to be 5 feet. And that's a desirable sidewalk, that type of sidewalk in residential house, communities in Montgomery County. However, where we're kind of an exception in this is it would be the only 5-foot sidewalk in the town. There are no 5-foot sidewalks on Bradley. There are no 5-foot sidewalks on East-West Highway. In fact, we came down from Wheaton on Connecticut Avenue, from Wheaton to Connecticut Avenue, and there's no 5-foot sidewalk between Wheaton and the Beltway. So it's probably a desirable, but I guess our position is it's not necessary. And it's a different character than the rest of the town. It also creates a little bit of a challenge for construction. I think it would need some construction diagrams done because the slope, if this is Leland Street here, the slope of the property that goes toward our house, which is downhill, and to change the slope to the Maryland desired guideline of a 2% slope toward the street, you'd have to cut quite a bit and lower the sidewalk. And the wider the sidewalk is, the more the cut, the deeper the cut has to be to get the sidewalk so that it slopes toward the street instead of toward the property. So we would like to see more of an engineering design done to really make sure they understand how that would work. And we think that making it 5 probably exacerbates the problem of the slope. So that's one of our inputs. The second input has to do with the new landscaped area. I'm not sure it was ever discussed at any of the monthly public meetings, but we feel like it's a real opportunity for the town to actually implement what the town is advising we all do, which is to try to put in more plants that are resistant to the weather, that don't take maintenance, that absorb rainwater, that can take sidewalk runoff, collect that so it doesn't have to go into the street. In other words, try to compensate for the loss of the permeable surface on our property, where our property meets the street in the public right of way, with something that actually is environmentally friendly. So all I would just suggest is, I think it could become a showpiece for the town rather than just one more patch of lawn that the people have to, the contractor has to come mow. So I would also like to add that as a request that it be done. And it would be ideal if it were done in the spirit of the gardens down at Zimmerman Park, which is just absolutely a great educational experience. And it's an incentive for all of us to garden more in that style. So I think I'd like to turn that into sort of an opportunity instead of, well, right now Hughes maintains these other, from what I understand, these other places where, like the end of this street where the street was eliminated and green space was added. There's another triangle down where Maple and Oak Lane and Leland meet. There's a circle over, I guess, on Rosemary. Now, most of those are not done in the spirit of the direction that the town's going. They're sort of backward looking instead of forward looking. But I think there's some opportunity there to kind of set an example and also encourage all of those who, if there's actually going to be a lot of pedestrian traffic there, which I hope that, there is as a result of this project, it's a great learning experience for everyone. So that's my 2 suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? I'm also offering those who are online if you would like to provide comments.
I'll put out one comment. I'm Zach Goldfarb. I live across the street on Leland. Appreciated all the work that's gone into this. I'm looking at the intersection right now as I talk to you. One thing, I'm always in the view that more data is better, and there have been some discussion, if it does proceed, with doing, I don't know the technical terms, but putting up some sort of infrastructure to test out what it would look like to have, the white lines, about half the cars ignore it and just do what they want right now, like force cars to obey the new structure and see how that works for a month or 2 months, and then make a final decision after we gain some more real life exposure to how it actually works, and whether the concerns that many of us have shared and, if pitted against like safety concerns, if any of that actually is, becomes a real thing. I would favor a test like that if it's feasible. And I think there was one of the discussions a few months ago, a discussion of a test like that. So I'm just saying, if there is a decision to proceed, I would favor something that could be more of a test to see how it really changes the intersection, which has a lot of different dynamics in it. That's all for me.
Thank you. Anyone? Yes, sir.
Hi, this is Ed Chaplin at 4329 Leland. And I just wanted to echo some of the things that my neighbors have been saying, that Carol and Lee were just saying about, as this project moves ahead, maybe making sure that the parking restriction changes are considered to coordinate with the change in the intersection. I think that's a smart thing to do. And I think, making sure that the traffic engineer does the appropriate diligence to make sure that the the lanes are wide enough for cars to get past each other, and all that stuff that I think is basic, basic stuff that needs to be done. But in general, I'm very enthusiastic about this. I'm grateful to the people who put the effort in and went through multiple iterations of this. Really took into account a lot of feedback from the neighbors to make sure that people's concerns were appropriately addressed. And I think to me it seems like it's pretty close, and I'm just eager for it to be moved through to completion. So thank you for everybody's hard work.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it to you, sir, and then there might be.
Hi, I'm Brad Thayer. I live at 4330 Leland, so right next to Zach. So I don't have quite the same excellent view of the intersection that he does, but pretty close. I also have a really good view of the coming around east onto Leland Street, because that's our corner. And I really just want to echo a lot of the comments that have been made. So first of all, in no particular order, I think if this is the only 5-foot sidewalk as far as we can ever see, I don't get that. So I think if we can do a 4-foot sidewalk there, we ought to do that. I also would echo the comment that I think this is a really important intersection, and glad that it's being addressed, and thank you for all your work. The other intersection that comes from east around to Leland is actually where somebody's going to get hurt. So I don't want to derail this process. We should finish this process, but I would urge the council to stare at that really hard next, because that is where somebody's actually going to get hurt. And I promise I'll run out and take care of the person, but it'd be nice.
Are you a doctor?
I'm not. Banker, so probably didn't really help. But anyway, I think that would be a great next priority for you guys to think about among all your other priorities. And I guess the last thing I'd say, I think not a lot expressed tonight, but probably some of the concern is, oh, we're going to have to slow down to come around this corner. I think that's kind of the point, or I think that is the point. So I embrace that. I suspect a lot of other people do too. And just thanks for all the work. And I agree with the last comment. I think it was Ed. Let's do it. So thanks.
Thank you. Melanie, did you also want to provide? Oh, I still can't hear you. I see you're on. Still can't hear you. Sorry.
She can call in perhaps. If she wants.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to call in and. Because I see you're unmuted, but for whatever reason, I can't hear you. We can't hear you. Okay. Anyone else in the room or online that would like to make a comment? While we wait.
She can walk down the street.
She can come. Yeah, you can come on down and join us if you'd like.
We're here waiting for you.
It wasn't the most articulate I ever was, but
Or walk to Ed's house.
this way I'm not the bad guy. Yeah, come across the street.
Ed, did you have comments as well?
He already spoke.
He did?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. When the camera's not on, I can't.
No, that was
Sorry.
Yeah.
Melanie, I don't know. I feel bad. I know that.
Can you hear us, Mel? Oh, can you hear us and Melanie?
She can.
Do you want to walk over to Ed's house and use his computer and speak, or do you want to come to the town hall?
Yeah, you're welcome to come across the street if you want, Melanie.
Melanie, our IT people here said, make sure your computer itself is not on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's your speakers.
Yeah, the output. In the meantime, is there anyone else? I want to make sure I give. Okay, just come on up so it can be recorded. So, yeah.
Wide sidewalk. We've come to understand, I think we've got this right, is that in a situation where the speed limit is 20 miles an hour or less, Carol? Then a 4-foot sidewalk is,
No, no, it's the 5-foot rule typically applies to speed limits that are 25 miles.
25 or more.
But ours is 20.
The speed limit there is 20, yes, okay. That's what I meant to say.
Okay,
Yeah, so-
thank you. All right. Anyone else on the line that would like to say? So Melanie, I do want to make sure we get your thoughts as well, because you're right at that corner, but I don't know how to.
Yeah, we could, call one of our phones and.
Do you want to call me and I can put you on speaker, Melanie? I'll give you the number. Everyone should know the mayor's number.
Or,
So
I mean, she
feel
could also
free.
call the Zoom number, which is 301
She left
715.
the room. Hold
Maybe
on.
she's going across the street. 8592.
Thank you. Okay.
Melanie, can you call the Zoom number for the meeting? I'll give it to you. It's 301 715 8592.
I think she's gonna need a meeting code and passcode. I don't think that's gonna work.
Okay, so the meeting ID, once you
Yeah.
get there, is, the meeting ID is 301 654 7144. And the passcode is 654 7144.
It's the same number 3 times. Yeah. If it's not working, Melanie, I'll give you my number.
Melanie, why don't you chat with me as I've been doing with you to give me your number? I can call you.
You can talk, but we don't hear you. Sorry. So, Todd, do you want to give her my cell phone or you want me to say it? Yeah.
Let me do this. Melanie, I just texted you a number to call. Chatted.
I don't know who she's calling, if it's me or someone else.
Hey, Melanie.
Hi.
Hi, hold on. Yes, I can hear you. And I think everybody will be able to once I mute myself and put you on. So I'll do that right now.
Okay. Oh, what happened? Todd, you need to put yourself on. Okay.
Back on.
Start
I know.
again.
Okay, I'll be okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I already put what I had to say in the chat. It was very short.
We don't see the chat.
Just want to concur with the temporary structure idea.
What was the last?
And I did not come in person because I had a major COVID exposure. That's all.
So Melanie said she agreed with this temporary structure idea.
That she would like to see the temporary structure as well. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, with that, public commentary is closed and opening it up for questions, comments, questions for Dave. What I heard, as just to give you, Dave, an opportunity to respond, the turning radius, what sort of studies, analysis, blah, 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 has been done around that. Let's do that first concern for both cars as well as for trucks.
Sure. Yeah,
Joe looked at this very carefully. For trucks that are coming, I guess, south on Leland, turning left onto east, that sort of has a larger turning radius because you're in the outside lane. And so that turning movement isn't impacted by the design. For cars that are coming up east and turning right onto Leland Street, because we're not changing that curb line, the turning movement there is the same as it currently is. There are occasionally, when you have a large landscaping truck with a trailer making that movement, if there's a car that's at the stop sign, that car will have to go in order to allow the truck to swing past it. And that currently happens, and that will also happen with this design, but it's not worse than the current condition that's there. No, it's not if there's, that's actually for a landscaper that's driving from east onto Leland.
Make sure you're on, just.
There's no parking around that.
Correct, but if they're traveling through the town, not parked, if they stop at the stop sign on east and turn onto Leland, just as a normal traffic movement, you know, that can be a place where a large truck with a trailer will have to sort of navigate through the intersection.
So they haven't included that part.
I'm sorry.
That's an existing process that made that.
Correct. I mean, it's not uncommon even for a four-way stop with T intersections on each leg that, you know, if there's a large truck with a trailer that, you know, they have to swing wide in order to stay on the road.
I just want to keep.
You've got to speak up.
The cars coming south on Wayland are going to be forced or to their left more and sooner, yeah.
Just have a point of order. What's the ground rule?
Yeah, this is a council discussion, okay? The public comment, we've heard your comments, and I've written them all down, and I'm going to ask the questions accordingly. So now we're going to go with what is the analysis that has been done. So just want to, this is a council discussion at this point. No worries, no worries. Thank you. Go ahead, Dave. If you have anything left on.
No, I mean, like I said, Joe's looked at it, everything, you know, meets county standards for road design. You know, on any of these narrow streets, if you have a very large truck with a trailer that's working its way through an intersection, you know, it needs to have both lanes clear. And so if there's a car at the stop sign, you know, just like the trash truck or, you know, when people drive around, you need to accommodate, work with them to get the traffic through.
Another comment that was brought up was around additional no parking restrictions that are suggested to be put in place. And I know some of that was discussed as well.
Yep. So the proposal that we're looking at changes a no parking anytime restriction with a no stopping or standing restriction, which is a little bit more restrictive in order to keep, you know, the intersection that we're looking at clear. Probably 10 years ago, the council looked at parking along Leland and changed the parking restriction so that it sort of staggered as you head out toward Wisconsin Avenue. So there is currently parking allowed on the south side of Leland across from 44th Street. And those spaces are allowed because there's no parking from that point all the way down through East Avenue. And so it was just, I think, a desire to have as much on-street parking as possible. I guess they could be removed, but it sort of
Hard to take something
hard.
away.
Well, that also leads to, further congestion up the street, and eventually you just run out of parking spaces for the number of cars that want to park.
Another discussion point was around putting up a temporary structure, which was something that was also discussed during the meetings in terms of the advantages for that and then the costs associated with doing something like that.
Yeah, it's certainly something that the town could do. It probably costs $3,500 to buy the bollards and have them installed. Joe's very comfortable that from an engineering and design perspective, this works. So he's not sure, we've documented the problems and complaints that we've had with the intersection. So Joe's not sure of the benefit of doing it on a temporary basis. But it's certainly something we could do if the council directed us to.
Another discussion point was 4-foot versus 5-foot sidewalks. So this also was one of the last points.
Sure. Yeah, Joe's recommending a 5-foot sidewalk because of its proximity to the curb. It's a very heavily trafficked street. If we were directed to install a 4-foot sidewalk, we certainly could make that change. It's not really a big deal. Most of the sidewalks in the town are 4-foot wide. So that would be easy to accommodate.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify those.
Might ask whether Howard wants to.
I'm sorry?
If Howard wants to make a comment or not.
Oh, Howard, do you want to make a comment? He wrote to me earlier and saying, that's okay, I'm gonna, I'm gonna observe. But please, if there are those are the questions I know that we had discussed as a committee and just wanted to get that out first.
Let the DOT expert speak first.
No, I was thinking about the landscaping comment for the green space there. We haven't gone to that extent yet about looking at landscaping there yet.
Yeah, we haven't gone to that extent. It's honestly not a huge green space that's being added. And because there's that sort of solid line of shrubs behind the existing curb line, it's really pretty tight. I know we want to maintain open sight lines. We can probably put in a tree between the sidewalk and the curb. We can probably put a tree behind it. There's an opportunity to put in shrubs. I think there are questions about maintenance, whether the adjacent resident maintains the area or if the town plants it and maintains it. And we could certainly work out an agreement either way.
Well, there's plenty of examples in the Dennison Garden of super thirsty shrubs. So those can easily be put in as well. Sorry, thirsty ones, yes, super thirsty. That's my technical term. Yeah.
I have a question. I want to follow up on the comment that was made about whether this actually makes it hard for cars to turn in the space that's allotted. I guess you have 12, each lane is 12 feet wide, is that right?
Yeah, I think the road is 25 feet wide, so 12 and a half from.
So is there, I guess, I'm just start thinking about this. Let me make first a general comment, which is, I fully support the principle of what's going on here. I mean, I've been at that intersection any number of times and I find it dangerous. You just can't see around where the stop sign is. And I think we do have to undertake a project. What I don't know is what is magic about the exact line that's there. If you cut it back another foot or two, if that accommodated cars turning more easily, would that still achieve the purpose? Or are we undercutting the safety of the intersection if we allowed for a little easier movement of cars going around the corner?
Well, the whole point was to make it as close to a T as possible. And we asked Joe that, like, just, because what's the difference if the curb, and I realize for those who are online, not realizing what I'm pointing to, but the curb line that's being shifted as you're going south on Leland, why there versus 3 feet to the west of that, or 2.5 feet or 1 foot or whatever. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but it was a big discussion from Joe's standpoint. It's like the whole point is to slow that traffic down and make the driver realize that, you know, you're coming to as close to the T intersection as possible. And if we start to give leeway too much, then it's going to just continue the pattern of like going quickly through that intersection is what exists today. I don't know if that's representing what Joe was.
Yeah, that's right. I guess both streets with the curb alignment, I guess, maintain their respective widths for the adjacent segments. So, you know, Leland Street from 44th Street down to the intersection is 25 feet wide, and that's what that curb line the new curb line will maintain. And the same thing for Leland Street coming south. And then, you know, the radius of the curve at the intersection, that's where you adjust it to provide the additional width to allow for traffic movement. And so Joe's designed it in a way that allows for cars to make that turn.
This includes, the graphic that you've showed includes the traffic markings on the street as they would.
Correct.
Right.
Just to help guide cars.
Yeah, no.
Around, yeah.
And then it's a very important aspect of the design is that that there will be markings indicating lanes and turning radiuses.
Mhm.
Yeah, the puppy tracks are significantly, it's a new experience for a driver that's coming from Wisconsin on Leland and taking a left to continue on. They're going deeper than, you know, what most folks are doing today. Yeah. Or would be. As for other intersections and taking a look, you know, the Public Services Committee really just wanted to focus on this specific intersection, recognizing fully that there are other elements to this, but wanted to just get the sight line here figured out before moving on to anything else.
And on that, Howard and I have already spoken, and it is on the agenda for the Public Services Committee to take up the Elbow intersection at on East, and we just realized that's not an easy issue to solve. Let's acknowledge that, but we do understand its importance. So that is on the agenda.
As are other
intersections too, right?
We got one the other day of another, you know, problematic area. So, any other questions or comments?
I tend to support the idea that the sidewalk need only be 4 feet wide. You know, put in a median strip there, but I don't see any reason to have an extra foot. And I like the idea to the extent that the bump out area could be a garden of some sort. Great. I don't know how it's set up or designed, but any place in town where something can be prettier rather than just grass is a good idea. So I'm happy to see that looked into.
Sure. We could leave that to staff to there's plenty of information on, and even Climate Environment Committee can come up with a couple of ideas, I'm sure.
I guess one other comment is if I've heard properly and listened, it seems to me, and I think a lot of credit goes to the Public Service Committee and Howard, your leadership, and Irene, you were the liaison, and to Dave, for working with all the nearby residents, because I believe I heard most of the nearby residents are okay with this at this point. They have some further comments to make, garden, narrower sidewalk, but it sounds to me like there's been a broad consensus reached of the near neighbors that this is an okay solution and perhaps a good one. So I think that's a real testament to the amount of work and effort that everybody, including the neighbors, have put into this to get to that endpoint.
Yeah.
So thank you all.
I did want to say one thing.
Of course.
And it's always, I guess, coming in from Wisconsin on Leland, that parking along that whole section has always bothered me. I know the town 10 years ago looked at it. But the problem that I see and do see every day when we go through there is that it's very difficult where we allow parking up to the area that we do now. It's very difficult for you to even see the stop sign before you're on it. And so I would like the Public Service Commission to kind of take a look at that stretch there
Okay.
and see how the parking can be improved. I know the residents there are going to complain. Most of them have driveways and can park vehicles there. So, you know, but somebody, we do need to take a look at that, because it is coming up 44th and making the left turn there. You run right into the cars that are parked there. And as soon as you make the turn, you're blind to the stop sign. And so I think it deserves the PSC to take a look at that as well.
Will all these be LED motion activated stop signs? Is that?
They all could be.
Could be.
We need to check to make sure that there's enough light that gets there to power the
that's true,
batteries.
positioning of it, yeah.
I guess that's
the
question for the council. I guess that's not something
Okay,
that's been
I'm
talked about.
just- There's one there now as you're from Wisconsin, as you're approaching like east or whatever, but I'm wondering if all of that can be considered. If I think we thought about it when it curves, coming off of east and you're making your way towards Leland, but we didn't know if there was enough sunlight to allow. Remember
Yeah, we
there?
looked at it. It's pretty shielded with
Yeah.
plantings and trees at that corner.
Okay. If it,
So
I would request if it can be done, as much as possible to take a look at that and obviously position it so it's not going to be hitting anybody's, living room or anything like that, which is what we do anyway. But I think it's worthy of consideration, just to any sort of, so if I'm understanding from everyone, the plan is a good one. The 5-foot sidewalk may be considered instead to be 4 feet wide. Okay. Maybe having town staff take a look at some sort of prettier landscaping for that area, whatever can be done aside from, and then obviously we need to look at, I would imagine it's the town that's going to be maintaining it, but I don't.
yeah, I'll reach out to Ed
Okay.
and see if he has a preference either way, but we can certainly install something and then work out a maintenance
Okay.
agreement, or we can maintain it.
And then looking to see if any of these can be the LED, if possible, if that's okay with you all. Any other sort of changes, concerns, any sort of?
I just have a question. If we were going to move forward with this, how long would that take in terms of construction? That's going to be a nuisance as well during construction.
Yeah, construction is probably about 2 weeks for the concrete work. The $100,000 estimate sort of assumes that we'll have to resurface the street. I'm not sure that we will. Sort of just depends on, what is damaged as a result of the installation of the new curbs. But, we repaved it not too long ago. And I think that, if we work carefully, we should be able to saw cut the new curb lines and get it in and do that without needing to repave. So that would save some time. And then it sort of just depends on the availability of when we could actually do the work, when we can get it scheduled. I know we're hoping to do some concrete work on Leland over by Connecticut later this year. So we'd probably dovetail the installation of this with that project.
2 weeks. And it wouldn't be blocked off. It would be, obviously there would be the ability to drive any point of day. It just kind of slows down.
Yeah,
There'd be
for
some signage.
Yeah, for the concrete work, there'd probably be a flagger. So we would maintain a travel lane. And there would be, maybe very temporary closures with detours that we would set up. But we certainly worked in that intersection before, and it's not easy, but it's doable.
Okay. Great. Are we ready to entertain a motion? We are ready to entertain a motion. Okay. Would you like to do so or have a question?
I try a motion. I would move that we move ahead with the realignment project on Leland and East. Subject to the staff looking at the moving from a 5-foot to a 4-foot sidewalk and allowing additional landscaping as on the green space.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. You're all set. Thank you very much, everyone. I think this will be a great project. And thank you again, Howard, for your leadership. So we'll move on now to the discussion.
PSC is going to look at it.
That's it. We'll move on to discussion and possible introduction of an ordinance to amend Chapter 4, specifically buildings to modify regulations related to overgrown vegetation management. This also dovetails with a discussion and possible approval of a revised town policy related to the overgrown vegetation management. So what we have also been working and dealing with is there are various widths of sidewalks throughout the town. Our current policy states that an edge-to-edge clearance of sidewalk clearance, so that people can obviously use the sidewalk, whether they're walking or rolling. This has led to a lot of different discussions, different folks around the town who feel as if there might be some kind of unequal treatment around that because of the various widths of sidewalks and the topography and who's responsible for what and things like that. So what is the potential idea is to just focus on an ADA standard, something that is well known throughout the nation, that effectively says there needs to be a 36-inch clearance width-wise and a 6'7", 6'6", sorry, 6'6" to 6'8". I know it's somewhere in there. I just forgot about it a second ago. What that clearance that allows for vertical clearance. And in applying that standard, it does not matter what the width of the sidewalk is throughout the town, but folks can realize that they understand it from an ADA purpose. It's important because we have a lot of children who are walking to schools. We have folks who just walk around with their dogs or otherwise for exercise throughout the day. We do have people who use walkers. We do have just a wide variety of people that are utilizing these sidewalks and want to feel safe when doing so. And we want to be able to, as a town, ensure that when we're communicating with residents about the policy, that it's something well understood and equitable throughout the town itself. So the discussion today is to take a look at, is ADA standard the appropriate standard to utilize? And is this something that we want to proceed with as we're now going to start kind of our, it's not biannual. When you do it every 3 years, triennial, is that right? I don't know. It's basically a tree inventory process that takes place to ensure that our arborist takes a look at all the different right-of-way trees, town trees, as well as private trees that might be overlooking that space, and figure out what needs to be trimmed back so that we can keep it safe for everybody. So kind of it's all one big jumble, but we thought now would be a good time to to have a standard policy in place that's clear to communicate and more importantly, clear to enforce. So that's where we're at. This first part is our ordinance. So part of this discussion is like our policy and our ordinance, of course, need to be aligned. Policy is more about the communication side, the enforcement side, but we also need to look at this ordinance. It's going to be a relaxing of an ordinance because instead of it being edge to edge clearance, now we're talking about a 36 inches and then whatever that height is. But nonetheless, it's a change to the ordinance if you all are in agreement about that. So I'll open this up.
I think all this makes a lot of sense. I think maybe relaxing the ordinance, but improving enforcement.
Yes.
Which is what really matters. And it gives very clear guidelines. I think that makes good sense.
Thank you. Were there any questions about the ordinance itself that was prepared by Ron? Nope. Okay. So I'm happy to, I guess, entertain a motion to introduce the ordinance in September for public hearing. So moved. Those are in favor? Aye. It's passed. The second part of this is the policy, right? So these are the standard operating procedures that the town staff will follow relating to this. And this is specifically relating to as our tree clearance contractor goes through different sections of the town, residents will be informed by a letter giving 30 days notice that in the next 30 days, your street's going to be cleared. We're looking for that 80 inches. Thank you. 36 inches of clearance on the sidewalk and 80 inches of height clearance. That letter will be followed up 20 days later. So it's within the next 10 days once it's all scheduled, and it'll be a little bit more personalized letter to say, 4106, I live at 4106 Aspen, the tree, the public tree is not in conformance. It will be cut back to ADA standard. So it's gonna not so much the species of tree as much as to say that this is a tree that's going in there. There's some questions around treatment of public trees versus private trees when they're overhanging the sidewalk itself. Obviously, the public trees are going to be that first line of defense, if you will, and then discussions have to take place when it's a privately planted tree that still needs to overhang. So it's going to, we're kind of testing this in terms of communication. One little street at a time to make sure to work out any possible kinks with this. But overall, we think that the more that we're communicating with residents and just trying to give them that opportunity to respond but yeah, at the end of the day, have better enforcement is the goal. Any other, did I forget any other aspect? Okay, so it's two letters. It's not going to necessarily be emails. If it's possible, great, but we don't have good email lists for our residents. We just have the mail, the letter. So that's what we're going to work with. Any questions about the policy?
No, I have a comment about our policy.
Okay.
One of them was we have discussed the idea of, if the corrective action is taken by the town, whether or not we actually charge the homeowner for that. And I think the way this is stated now, it says it may, we may do that. And for the correct, and especially on the corrective actions for the clearance of visibility, it makes it clear that, our intent is that the homeowner in violation of that particular part is really, we're really more aggressive on that than we are on just the accessibility portion. So I thought it was well constructed.
Okay, good. Well, thanks to Dave, he put that together and along with Todd. So as long as you guys are feeling happy, we're feeling happy. So I am ready to entertain a motion to approve the policy, the standard operating procedure. The idea here is that if we were to do so this evening, we can start this communication process as soon as the September forecast. And this will just be the whys. Why is this important as a town to really conform to this ADA standard and then go from there? So great. Move. Second. Second. All those in favor? Aye. It passes unanimously. Thank you. So the ordinance will be introduced in September for public comment, but the policy has been approved. Okay. So now we go to other business updates. The first one is the Attainable Housing Strategies Initiative. I want to thank everyone that came to our public forum on June 13th about the county's attainable housing strategies. I think that it was a very well attended meeting. Thank you. I think it was a very well attended meeting. I think that the county was impressed by the level of detail in terms of the discussions and the questions that came about. And yeah, so where this is at now is the the county planning department transferred the recommendations, this is the planning board's recommendations, to the county council planning, housing, and parks committee. That committee consists of 3 council members chaired by Councilmember Friedson, who is our representative on the council. And the other 2 members are Will Jawando and Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. Interesting to note that Will Jawando is the one who introduced a ZTA in 2020, just to say that everything should shift to multifamily housing and we should just go forward with that. It was a surprise, not only to members of the council, but members of the planning department at the time in 2020 when this was announced. But I think that Councilmember Jawando is very happy that at least this conversation is taking place right now. Councilmember Natalie Fanny Gonzalez is a former planning board member. So she went from the planning board. So when she was a part of that board, they were knee deep in these types of discussions about multifamily, introducing multifamily housing within the county. I'm telling you that to give you a flavor of those that are on that committee presently. Excuse me? Is Andrew Friedson, yes.
What is he?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And it remains to be seen as to exactly where he will fall in terms of all this. But certainly the other 2 members, it's a 3-member committee. The other 2 members are very excited by all of these recommendations. The process is that this past Monday, the committee held its first of 2 work sessions. The second will be on the 22nd of July. I will say that the one on Monday was more presentation. There wasn't really a lot of discussion and there were no decisions made whatsoever. We have posted via the town crier the actual county council staff report, which has some questions around should the priority housing district be 1 mile away from a station? Does that make sense? Should it be shorter than that? That question was it was asked, but it was not answered. With respect to other kind of concepts, medium scale housing, the attainable housing optional method of development, all these other, changes of definitions, the county council staff was in support of. But there wasn't much discussion on it. The types of questions that did come up were, with respect to other jurisdictions around the country that have passed this type of zoning changes, what have been the impacts? And the last time that the county planning department had done such a study was in 2019. So obviously the world has changed since then. And the county council, Councilmember Friedson specifically said, that data needs to be updated, specifically around what have been the impacts in terms of have private equity hedge fund managers come in and bought up these properties? What's been the impact for rental rates? Has it actually increased home ownership? So whether that information and analysis can be done in time or in parallel or what, it's very unclear. There was no like, we need to see that data first before we make a decision. There was none of that type of discussion taking place. But at the very least, there's at least an understanding of that this will be the niche market that takes place today in terms of private equity buying up single family homes is something that wasn't supposed to happen, but has. So how do you handle that when you're talking about multifamily housing? At least that's entered into this discussion. After the work session on July 22nd, then they will break for recess, and the county council is planning on holding district forums in the latter part of August into September with all the different areas. I don't know what the date of our district, but as soon as Andrew Friedson comes up with a date, we'll make sure that all of our residents know so they can come and ask him questions in person as to what his thoughts are, and of course relay your concerns on things. After that, we don't know what the dates look like. There is an understanding from the county council staff that a ZTA, a zoning text amendment, will be introduced this fall. We don't know the date. And we further don't know if if the idea is to hear from the public, then draw the ZTA and then have another set of public hearings, or what order all of that will take place. Whether it'll be public hearings first and then a ZTA, or a ZTA, then the public hearings. I don't have the answer to any of that, and neither does the county council staff. So it's a bit kind of unclear right now, the timeline for all of this. So I think that's all I have to say about that. Not much of an update, but that's all that I have. The second part is the technical amendment to state law to clarify municipal regulatory authority. So just for those that are on the line, our current municipal authority, we actually receive our the ability for us to regulate single family homes, and all that authority comes from the state through code there. We are not, we as a municipality are not able to do anything around zoning. There's like Rockville and Gaithersburg and a couple others out there that were grandfathered back in the 50s that can do that, but it's the town of Chevy Chase is not one of them. However, our state authority specifically relates to single family homes, because up until a few years ago, that's what neighborhoods consisted of around the country, right? You either lived in apartment buildings or you lived in a single family neighborhood. So what we're looking to do is what we have been doing is working with our state delegation to pass a technical amendment that basically strikes the word single family and just says, we have authority over all residential buildings. So that's effectively the technical amendment that we're talking about. We're working with our area municipalities so that all of us are, it's not like a town of Chevy Chase request. It's actually all of us in Montgomery County that are municipalities that don't have zoning authority are looking for this change. The planning department is in support of this because it creates clarity. And our state delegation is also willing to support this as long as there is language in there that also says we won't prohibit multifamily housing. We won't impede multifamily housing. And this relates to the recently passed state legislation where I realize that you'd made a public comment. I'm not going to crosstalk as much as to say single family neighborhoods, the state legislation that was passed, single family neighborhoods are exempt. However, if a nonprofit developer, a 501c3 designated developer comes in and says, I want to build a qualified project that will consist of multifamily housing, they are able to do that in single family neighborhoods. So that's a state across the states, not just like us in Bethesda or in Montgomery County. That law did pass, that was signed by the governor. Again, you're talking about a nonprofit developer coming in and so a little bit of a different situation potentially, but we're not at this point directly impacted by that that state legislation. So just want to make that a little bit clear. So the technical amendment, the verbiage has been shared with our area municipalities. I've asked that they provide any comments on it by the 26th of July. So in early August, we'll get that finalized. That will also be released to you all so that you're aware about this particular verbiage. And what I wanted to kind of ask you all, and I don't know what the rule is around this is for this technical amendment, do we want to have a public hearing on it? And maybe that's a question for Ron and Todd, what the rules are around that.
I can make a comment first, Irene, just on all this. And you're right that the issue of attainable housing that's being developed by the planning board and likely to be turned into a ZTA. I think what you're indicating is probably true, that we may well be able to make some or push for some changes, but I think there's a very strong impetus on the part of the county to have a change of some sort. Exactly what degree, we don't know. And I think the town certainly has a voice in trying to curb some of the most excessive bits. But I think for anybody who thinks that the town can just say no, 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 and will be heard, we don't believe that that's the case, that indeed some degree of multifamily housing is very likely to come across the county. And I think, just to be clear, that when you refer to the town not having zoning, that's what the town does not control. We cannot control the use of land. That is up to the county to determine, and that's what a zoning text amendment would do.
Yeah.
What I think, and I really want to give you credit, Irene, that in respect to the authority we have from the state to set the setbacks, the height, and the massing, that's not zoning per se. That's just, just what those things are. And those individual items are the authority we get from the state. And I think your work to seek to get that clarified and gain support from the state delegation has been really excellent, and then marshaling all the other communities. When I met with our delegation, the entire delegation came to the July 4th picnic. It's a great opportunity, by the way, to chat with your state delegation. They all said that what really impressed them when they got on the call was how many other municipalities were also on the call who care about this matter. And to all of us, as we've said it so often to our residents, it's one thing if you can say to a fellow resident, look, the house can't be bigger, but it might have 2 front doors instead of 1 front door. Okay. But if you can't say that, if the risk is that a house with 2 front doors is a bigger house than we would permit a one door residence to have, that becomes a much bigger issue. So if we're successful in getting the clarification we seek, I think that will help a lot, and very much to the credit of you and the town that we've steered that direction and been able to get that clarification. That's all still a hope. A lot could go wrong, but at least at the moment there seems to be some support for that, and that's great. And the key thing is to be timely about it and make sure that it is seen as a technical amendment just for Montgomery County, so it doesn't bother anybody else in the state. And that is the way that right now our delegation would propose to handle it. So anyway, I think that, and certainly in the minds of the residents, if we are able to get that clarification, that will certainly be a big win for the town.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, so Ron, if you could let us know, what is the procedure for this, getting resident input on the technical amendment and like how all that works?
Sure. So the town charter and code don't require you to have a public hearing before giving comments to another governmental body, but you may decide whether or not you want to do so. In the past, although the town council hasn't been required to have public hearings, sometimes based on the gravity of the issue, the council will voluntarily do so. I think that's a decision for the council to make. Personally, I don't think this is very controversial since it's just a technical clarification, but it's for the council to decide.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know the protocol, and I wanted to let you all weigh in case you all felt that because of the fact that it's mentioning multifamily housing, right? Because that's in terms of the technical amendment. So that one extra line on the thing. So
I think, I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think it would be, very consistent with the positions that we are taking on, or the positions that we took with this respect to the state action last year, and our positions on development in Bethesda, and certainly on attainable housing in the county. That, and we've heard from a lot of residents who aren't against multifamily properties. What they're against is, excessive density, overcrowding, overtaxing of our infrastructure.
Yeah.
I think that's consistent across many communities, not just ours. And I think having a discussion with residents about the change of that one word, I think would help, because it's so enormously confusing. I think it would really help for all of us also to just really understand what's happening all at once.
Yeah.
So, even though it's not required, I think it would be helpful for residents to really understand, just the overlay of all of the laws that are really impacting us.
So in terms of like communicate that out, and therefore this is what the town council is like approve, and if you have any comments, questions, let us know, kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very much aligned.
I just wasn't sure.
I think having that as a major agenda item in the September,
Yeah.
and put out the language that we will be seeking to support, and ask for public comments, and we'll tend to pass a resolution of support. But I think that's helpful in establishing the, and presumably a lot of the other municipalities are going through the same process. So
In
it's helpful
September,
that if we collectively are able to say that this is not just a few individuals or a few mayors, but it is the full force of the governments of all these municipalities, it's useful to be able to say that.
Yeah. Okay. We'll set that up for September. Great. The next item is the county growth and infrastructure policy. So Joy and I had a very interesting meeting. Again, with the county during the long range planning committee meeting that occurred on the 20th of June. And you and I have not had a chance to necessarily debrief in detail on that, but the point of the meeting was to have the county describe, because when we're talking about things such as increased attainable housing and increased density, when we're talking about, which will be the next item, the Bethesda Minor Master Plan Amendment that is to raise the development cap that currently exists in potentially raise it in Bethesda, and what that impact is on schools, what that impact is on our sewer and water infrastructure, what that impact is for traffic congestion. Everyone in the county will answer, well, that's just the growth and infrastructure policy. So I was totally excited for this meeting to learn about the growth and infrastructure policy. So county folks came in and talked about, and we provided specific, pain points, maybe kind of examples that occur in our community. For example, everyone talks about the importance of not traffic congestion, but it's like the vision zero, making sure the pedestrian safety and, you know, bicyclists, whatever. So I said, why then aren't you looking at the growth infrastructure policy and specifically coming up with suggestions for how to better interact with the state highway administration, so we don't have to wait for 7 years to get a red light signal across from East-West Highway crosswalk? And they said, well, we don't do that. We don't interact with the state highway administration. Great. So another question, you know that Bethesda you had said initially, County, that multifamily housing does not generate students. However, with all the increased development in Bethesda, you can see that Bethesda Elementary School is already over capacity. So County, what do you do with that data so that in 10 years from now, when it becomes, you know, with all this additional density that you're planning, and it takes 10 years to build a school because it takes that long for money to be, you know, to save the money for it. What do you do so that you inform public school system or that you inform the county council? Oh, we don't do that. So it was an illuminating conversation that effectively comes down to the growth infrastructure policy is a data collection engine. It's not a strategic decision-making policy, which was unfortunate to hear, because I don't know who is making those strategic decisions, right? There's a vacuum, there's a gap. I don't know if you have a better word for it, but
I would say it's a governance and accountability issue that essentially, if I can say this, there's no throat to choke.
No throat to choke.
I mean, you know, if we're really concerned, you know, this is not just NIMBYs. I mean, we love this area. Many of us have been here decades. And the reason why we stay here is because it's great. We don't want it to be just, you know, destroyed by, you know, excessive development. We do not want this to be Tyson's. But there is no place to go to say, okay, I'm not going to vote for you if, you know, there's, you know, having the growth and infrastructure policy just collect data and not provide information to a strategic decision maker who can be accountable for the way something is going to end up is a problem for us. And so, you know, we are trying to work all of the avenues that we can to be influential wherever decision makers are, and also trying to make sure that residents have an opportunity to weigh in.
So they're forging ahead. The growth infrastructure policy will be approved by the planning board the end of this month, distributed by August 1st to the county council. The county council by law has to approve the growth infrastructure plan by November the 15th. So there'll be another opportunity for the public to weigh in, but I'm kind of, you know, if we are intent on submitting some level of testimony, it's personally, I'm at the point where I'm like, there's a hole here and no one is making these decisions in a way that appears that there's some strategy behind their plans. So anyway, that's where we're at.
I thought when we heard from the planning director, there's no requirement that they use this information, but they do get it. And I mean, that was one of the things she said, well, we'll get that data from the growth and infrastructure policy when it's redone, when they get it. So they're not required to use it. They're not required to put it into any decision-making process, but it gives them the data. And that's essentially what you're saying. It's just a data document for them.
It's just a data collection effort. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
I have a couple of thoughts just generally. One is we are a very, very busy council with everything we're doing. And, you know, what you just described in respect to attainable housing and the effort to get clarity on a town's authority with the state, the work for the Bethesda Market Park, the other projects we have, of course. So I think we have to be mindful of what we think we can really have the time and the resources to actually make a difference on. And so that's, I love that expression. We don't know what to choke, what throat to choke. I've never heard that before. I love it. But I think we just have to be very realistic about what our capacity is to take on something as mushy as the infrastructure policy. Having said that, I guess my question or thought is, do we have any sense from some of the other communities surrounding Bethesda? Are there one or two surgical points where we really would want to bring pressure? Now, in the past, East Bethesda has had a very good cadre of people who work these issues, and we have had a very good rapport with them. And certainly there are people elsewhere in the area. So I'm just wondering whether, rather than feeling like we have to take on the entire construct of this document, we say, okay, here are a couple of things that really matter to us. Let's just go after those two things, get support from other constituencies, other neighborhoods, and go for that, and make that the pressure point for our discussions with Andrew Friedson, who after all is our council member. And just a thought as to sort of how we can try to marshal our resources in a way that could actually be effective. I think if we just look at that whole big document and feel you got to go after all of it, we're just going to get lost.
Yeah. I wish I had an answer, because the discussions that I've had with a few other civic associations and municipalities, they're buckling under the weight of attainable housing, and then if not that, then the minor master plan amendment. And it's and to even have squeezed in the technical amendment was, so yeah. So this is like the last on the list of things, and it's unfortunate, but you're absolutely right. There's only so much capacity that we have. Anyway, to be continued. We'll see what they come up with there. This last part on the Bethesda Minor Master Plan Amendment. So on July the 30th at 6 p.m. in the Connie Morella Library, August 14th at 7 p.m. online, and August 17th here in this room, which is a Saturday, folks from the county are going to come in to talk about the Bethesda Minor Master Plan Amendment and gather information. The goal is to find out pain points, as well as what that flexibility is when looking at the development cap that exists in Bethesda currently, but that folks ran out of space a lot more quickly than they anticipated. What was the 20-year plan in terms of development was reached in 7. So it's a very popular area to build, and as we all know, and it's a bit of a kind of the economic engine too for the rest of the county. So they being the county don't want to necessarily squelch potential development opportunity. But this is why I need to meet with area communities that are living and breathing this every day, to better understand what those points are, and given other things going on. So one of them is, for example, why don't we have a community recreation center? This is the only area of the county that does not have in what I don't mean I mean like a full-fledged, has a swimming pool, it has a, all the different bells and whistles, if you will, but we don't have one. Why not? Why can't we look at that kind of and other things out there, given the immense amount of development that is occurring in this area? So I want to hear from residents, and as I mentioned, they're having these 3 meetings. The intent is to once again in September, they'll be back in front of the planning board with their initial recommendations based on this feedback. And then that will be in front of the planning board. The planning board will likely October-ish maybe approve something, and it'll then go to the county council. So everything is happening really in parallel, super fast, all about density.
But none of this was
Unanticipated?
None of it
Well,
was unanticipated.
I think,
I've heard the argument about the community center since they did the last one. That was involved in that. So, I, going back, there's no way to joke. Using that phrase, which I think is appropriate. I think we went back and looked at the discussions that went on.
I wasn't even living in the town when that was going on so long ago.
wait, which master plan, I have to ask you, Grant, which master plan are you referring to?
The big one, the one that set
The 2017.
Yeah.
27.
The one that set the 30 million.
Yeah, 32 million, right, okay.
32.4.
Yeah, so if you go back and look at the record of the discussions at that point, you'll see that the significant questions about how quickly the 32 million was raised, the lack of a community center, the lack, so they all been, so they're having another meeting to, I guess, say, I told you so, or those that commented.
Well,
Well, if I could make,
yeah, 13 parks were supposed to be, we haven't gotten one.
There's no space, they argued there was no space. Yeah, like, this part was the only one I think that's actually gonna come to fruition.
could be.
You know, and it's largely.
Is
Circumscribed. I mean, it's not opening the whole master
just
plan.
this-
It's just specific
the cap.
cap is the only thing they're looking at.
I think to me that what's really fundamental here is that the first plan, or the first thought that the planning staff had was to eliminate the cap altogether, just abolish it, just build as much as you want, Bethesda. And so I think it's a really fundamental point, certainly, that I feel strongly about is whatever the additional amount of density may be permitted, it has to also be capped, because the only time we have any leverage for any large scale projects, whether it be a rec center or 3 lanes on Leland going into Wisconsin, or widening Bradley at Wisconsin to allow left turn. I mean, all those things, we as residents only have a chance to have really material input when they're approaching the cap and they have to come back and try to get support for yet another right, amount of density. So holding a cap at some point is absolutely fundamental. And then the question is, well, how much, is okay, but what is it that collectively the communities get in return in terms of better infrastructure? And in some sense, that may become what is our growth and infrastructure plan, right? It's basically they're going to build more density and set those checkpoints that we have a chance to insert and try to get some of that more common facilities.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. Okay, my last, unless there were other questions, I'm meeting tomorrow with Councilmember Evan Glass, and I wasn't sure if there were any specific thoughts, questions you would like it's just a coffee thing. Yeah, so if there's anything you want me to bring up.
I would really encourage a discussion about the gradations in what will come out as a ZTA, and to our town. I mean, it's really clear. There are 4. There's duplexes, there's triplexes, there are quads, and then there's the A home, or whatever you want to call the system, will coming 500 feet off the, and I think sounding out where he is and making clear how the town's calibration, without saying exactly what it is, what we do know is that at each of those steps, more and more of the residents get more and more concerned. And I think making the points that, as you brought up, that this isn't just about opposing or being NIMBYs, it's ultimately about parking and infrastructure, and that the more that what might be okay at a lower level of multifamily housing becomes a much greater concern at much higher levels of multifamily housing when there's no provision for how the infrastructure is going to handle it. And I would just really try to sound that out and push them.
following on, I mean, at the base of all that is the premise that we can still control massing, dense park, all of those things. So just highlighting to him, hey, this is a fundamental position that we have is this underlying premise that we get to control, other than zoning, we do have authorities and we want to keep them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other things you want me to pass along? Okay, I got my marching orders. I'm gonna have a busy day tomorrow.